Yeah, I'll have to agree with the walking thesaurus on that one.
Do not ever call me a thesaurus.
It's just a metaphor, dude.
His people are completely literal. Metaphors are gonna go over his head.
Nothing goes over my head. My reflexes are too fast. I would catch it.
I'm gonna die surrounded by the biggest idiots in the galaxy.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where each week we enter the world of a great film. We explore its themes, the history, the filmmaking, and the influence it has on us today. My name is Steve Morris, and I am a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Rocha. I'm a writer, producer, host, and voiceover artist down in San Diego, California, and massive Marvel fan, Steve. Here we go, walking into one of the greatest ones they've done in the first parts of their phases.
Honestly, I can't tell you how happy I am to jump into this one. It's funny, you know, we've been in sort of a Marvel, are they good kind of time where each time you see a new Marvel thing, there's some trepidation. And this is peak Marvel. And we're going back to, this might very well be my favorite of the MC movies, period.
Wow.
I love this film.
Wow.
I'm not saying it's necessarily the best of the films.
Yeah.
But this is, by the way, we're talking about Guardians of the Galaxy, and it might just be my favorite. There's not a single Marvel film makes me as happy as this one does.
It's a great point. You know, my other co-host formerly on the Top 10, Matt knows this was his favorite MCU film as well. So interesting to hear people say that. I think it's a great film. I love the film, but I have never necessarily put it up in my top 10 of the MCU, I don't think, or maybe top 5 rather. But after watching it for our conversation that we're going to have over these next two parts, I have to say this is one that holds up. It's been 10 years and it still has the humor, the action stuff. You still enjoy the introduction of the characters, the performances, the writing of this thing. It is deceptively huge and small at the same time in how it goes about its telling its story. And yeah, this is one that I totally understand why someone like you would have it near the top of your list or at the top of your list, because it is an infinitely fantastic film that is deceptively underappreciated because it's funny, you know, and there's a difference there.
So, and as we said a few years ago, we're going to kind of make our way through the MCU. And I think for movies like this that we really love, they get the full Cine-Files treatment. For some other movies that we're going to be coming up on, maybe there'll be a live show. Maybe there'll be several of them combined in a live show. They won't get this treatment. But I'm really excited to be doing for this. And we should say that for people who want to support the Cine-Files, you can go to patreon.com/thecine-files, where we have a whole bunch of tiers, including ad-free versions of the show. You can have combined where we do multiple episodes. We'll put them all together as one episode. You can have questions. We have several questions that came in from our patrons about Guardians of the Galaxy we'll be answering today. And you could also listen to our Cine-Files shorts and, of course, join our advisory board. But if Patreon is not your thing and you use Apple, then there's a very, very easy way to support the show, which is you just subscribe right on Apple Podcasts. It's one click for $5 a month or $50 a year. You can get those ad-free versions of our show, as well as of all of our Cine-Files shorts, which we release every week. And that is a fantastic way to support the show.
Another way that people can support the show is, we have our ads, we have our breaks where you hear, as some of us, Steve and I do, the commercials for these clients who support us, who support the show. You can go there and use any of their products and purchase their products and use our code there so that they see that our fans and our listeners are using the products and are using our code to get the products. That's another way that you can support the show. And listen, on a personal note, we know what happened, and thank you to everybody. We know what happened last week, and thank you to everybody who allowed us to have a week off from the show and understood. No one said anything negative, so we want to thank you guys very much for giving us a few days to kind of process the things that happened. We're not going to get into it, obviously, here on the show, but just wanted to let you guys know thank you very much. And look, supporting our show is important. We don't know what's going to happen over the next few years, but artwork, people who create things, it's important to appreciate it. And I want to just say that personally for me, I'm going to look to support more stuff going forward in the future because I don't know how much we're going to have of it going forward over the next 4 years. And so if any of you have been maybe hesitating supporting us or hesitating jumping onto the Patreon, we can't encourage you enough to do it so that, we can keep going, doing the show. We can create more content for you all, have more and more stuff we can deliver that you all can enjoy and maybe put a smile on your face no matter what's going on in your world and in your day.
I think that is a great point. And I think I've been thinking about the same thing just in terms of supporting more work. So I support right now 3 different podcasts,
Yeah.
Like the Cine-Files. And I'm like, you know what? If I want people to support our show, which obviously this helps us keep the show going, then I need to do better about supporting some of the great work of other people I love. No, it's 4 podcasts. I support 4, and I'm going to look at other ones to start helping out with.
I'm on 3 Patreons myself, 4 podcasts. One of them on meditation to support that going out to other people because it helped me so much during my tough time. So it's a way of giving back, and it doesn't have to be a lot, but it is something, and it's the gesture I think that counts.
Well, and I think it's the difference too between, you can give your $9, $10, $18, whatever it is to Netflix or Disney or Apple or Amazon, massive corporations like that, or you can support the actual individual people that are making the stuff that you love.
Yeah.
Great point. And that's a great way to do it. So, John, Guardians of the Galaxy. How did you first come to this film?
This is an interesting story, and how I came to this. This is the 10th film in the MCU, right? And people forget because this is phase 2. This is right in the middle of phase 2. And phase 1, really exciting stuff. Captain America, First Avenger, The Avengers, Thor, Iron Man, and then Iron Man 2, Incredible Hulk. Lesser so, but then you get into Iron Man 3, which I initially liked. Thor Dark World, I do like it, although I know a lot of people don't. Winter Soldier was incredible, and then this is right after Winter Soldier. So this is right as Marvel is making that turn, like really hitting its peak, doing its thing. So there was an initial release of like 10 minutes of the movie in IMAX. I think it was 8 to 10 minutes of the movie. It was the entire sequence there on Kiln, on the prison rather. That whole scene they released early, and I remember getting in line with geek buddy Shannon McClung at the Century City movie theater, and we stood in line for 2 hours just to get inside of this theater and watch 10 minutes of this movie and get the mini poster for it. That's it. That's all it was. There's 10 minutes of the movie. That's where Marvel was, and like how excited and how much faith they had in this movie. So I first saw a glimpse of the movie in that way, and then eventually saw it, I think, opening night with all of us, and like 75 people, all of us going to see it, probably at the Grove. And I just remember loving this movie, just absolutely having such a great time with this movie and being blown away about how they made it work with a team of heroes that I always remember being near the back half of the comic book shelves, and
not even near the back half. Yeah. We're clearly at the end.
Yeah, like way at the end of the shelf. Yeah, you're right. Like all the way down with the weird mystery stuff and all these things. Guardians of the Galaxy was mixed in there. So I always saw them. I rarely, if ever, bought or read those comics, but I did always find them to be interesting covers. So the fact that he made this work, James Gunn made this work, I thought was incredible.
So I was not at that big group going to the Grove or whatever it was. Yeah. So it's 2014. Jackson is 3 years old. This is definitely at the time where I am not going out to a lot of movies.
Right.
I remember I'd seen the trailer, and I remember watching the trailer going, and the trailer's funny. I mean, it was a genuinely funny trailer, but I was still going like, Guardians of the Galaxy? Like, really? Like, I mean, is Marvel just instantly jumping the shark? Like, we just had all this success and now they're doing this. And I didn't go to see it opening night. And Steve Jones, friend of the show, who's been on several times, called me up and said, have you seen Guardians of the Galaxy? I'm like, no, I mean, I'll get to it and maybe I'll wait till it comes out on video or something. He's like, no, we need to go to this movie. I have already seen it once. It is way better than you think it is. Yeah. And so we went to a screening at night at the Burbank AMC.
Wow.
And I remember walking out of it and going, I think that was really great. Like, I think it was really great.
Yeah.
And then the Blu-ray came out and Karen hadn't seen it. And the Blu-ray came out and I bought the Blu-ray the day it came out and she was going out to do something. And so after I put the kid to bed, I watched the Blu-ray again. And then she came home and I was like, you know what? You need to see this movie. And so I watched it the next night, 2 nights in a row, particularly because of the music, because Karen was a huge music person and I knew she would absolutely love the soundtrack. And of course she loved it. And I think Guardians of the Galaxy is bar none her favorite Marvel characters are from the Guardians of the Galaxy. So yeah, this movie definitely put its hooks in me right away.
Yeah, there's a joy to this one. Yes. There is a joy to this movie. Even though the stakes are pretty high, you're getting Thanos much more involved now. Ronan is in here. There's so much drama and high stakes, but it is a fun movie. And it's a heartwarming movie. Like
Exactly.
that's really the gift of this film is you're seeing these people from all these different walks of life and different upbringings, different tragic situations or different difficult situations, all coming together and then finding a sense of community and camaraderie. And they are essentially people who've worked alone, except for Rocket and Groot, obviously. But like Gamora was her own thing. Even though she had her sister, she was very much separate from her sister by being the favorite. You have Drax with his situation with his wife and his child. And then you have Quill with what happened with his mom, as we see at the beginning of the movie. So they were all like essentially solo artists who come together to form this incredible group. And it's so great the way they come together. And you just love them by the end of the movie.
I think the key to it is, yes, it is really, really funny. I mean, super genuinely funny. But these are really sad characters.
Yes. Yeah.
There is a lot of sadness in this film. And I think that what this movie manages to do better than any of the other Guardians of the Galaxy movies, both I like the other two, and better than really anything else, is they managed to balance that sadness with that humor just perfectly throughout the whole film.
Yeah, agreed.
I'll give you a little bit of pre-production. Here's the thing I cannot find out. And maybe but I can't find anywhere. I know that it was around 2008, 2009 that Marvel started talking about the Guardians of the Galaxy. It's before James Gunn came on. But what I don't know is why. I don't know who first had this idea that they should do the Guardians of the Galaxy, and why did they think this was a good idea? I cannot find anything. Do you know anything about how it came about initially?
Yeah, Nicole Perlman, because some people, we have to do a really good job of making sure people understand that it was Nicole Perlman who got this thing going, right? It was.
I thought she was assigned. I didn't think she got it going.
But she was enrolled. But I mean that by that, like she was enrolled in Marvel's screenwriting program in 2009. Then she was offered a bunch of lesser-known properties to base a screenplay on, but she chose out of those Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning's Guardians of the Galaxy due to her interest in space and science fiction. And she said, I think Marvel were a little taken aback when I chose Guardians because there were ones that would make a lot more sense if you were a romantic comedy writer or something like that. And she wrote 10 drafts between 2009 and 2011, coming up with various combinations of the team. Because for those of you who may not know, in the comics, there are numerous iterations of the Guardians of the Galaxy. And if you've watched 2 and 3, you've seen like Stallone and other people playing characters that were part of the original Guardians of the Galaxy. So she messed around with different lineups throughout in all of this, but some of the stuff maintained itself through all the drafts. Like Nova was there. Star-Lord was a big part of it as well. So there was a lot that she was involved in creating. So she was part of the program. And then I guess because they really liked her as a screenwriter, they were like, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to look at? And she came up with working on Guardians of the Galaxy, which I imagine for Feige was an awesome little challenge, and these are the gutsy things you do as a young executive if you're a really good young executive. And I don't mean young in terms of like he's 20. I just mean young in terms of the career, right? And where do you go? Oh, you see this opportunity. Okay, you know what? Let's take a chance. This sounds good. I'm going to read the script. This actually looks real fun or sounds real fun. Let's see where we can go. Who can we get on this? Who can we get to star in this? So she's a really essential reason why this thing became as successful as it did. I know James Gunn gets a lot of the credit, but people sometimes give short shrift to Nicole Perlman, and I think she deserves much more credit than she gets.
Well, you put the piece that I was missing, which is I knew that she was in the Marvel Writers Program, and I knew that she was brought onto the script, but I didn't know that she picked it. Yeah. That's really interesting because it's really the opposite of everything we hear about IP. If you are in these meetings, and I know you've talked to Vogel about these things, but people look at the IP and they go, which piece of intellectual property has the greatest name recognition? And that is where we should put our greatest efforts because we know that people will come to see the thing if they see Captain America, Hulk, Iron Man, Spider-Man, that's the big stuff. Right. This is not that. There is zero name recognition of anybody in this thing other than possibly Thanos. Like that's all other than that, nobody, it's like Star-Lord is not a huge character.
Yeah.
And as you said, she did 10 drafts and then James Gunn gets brought in. And let's talk a little about James Gunn. So he has the same kind of story as like Steven Spielberg and the Coen brothers and Ken Burns he had that Super 8 camera. Yeah. And for him, it was making horror movies with all of his brothers. little short films. And then he gets hired by Trauma Entertainment. He works on Romeo and Juliet, which he writes. His big thing was he does the Scooby-Doo screenplay in 2002, writes the remake of The Walking Dead. Then he does Super in 2010. Slither in 2006, and then Super in 2010. So he is moving around in the quirky sort of horror world and the screenwriting for animation world. And he had gotten to know Joss Whedon, and I guess Joss Whedon had talked to Kevin Feige about him. So he gets called in, and they start going through some of the things Marvel is working on. Yeah. And they showed him some concept art for Guardians of the Galaxy. And he wasn't that into it. And then he goes home and he keeps thinking about it, and he starts obsessing about it. And he goes, shit, I blew it in the meeting. I told Kevin Feige I wasn't that interested in Guardians of the Galaxy. I think I'm really interested in it. I should call up Joss Whedon. So he calls up Joss Whedon and says, hey, Joss, I'm really sorry, but I think I blew that meeting, and I really do want to do Guardians of the Galaxy. Is there anything you can do? And Joss basically goes, look, man, you're too late. Because I've already been pitching you for doing this thing for 2 weeks now. So yes, I'm already pushing for it. So Joss Whedon really championed James Gunn, and part of it too is that Sean Gunn, Joss's brother, had acted for Joss Whedon on Buffy, I think. But
James
I'm not sure.
Gunn's brother, yes. Yeah.
Yes. So he gets hired in 2012. The big touchstone, and you will appreciate this for this movie, for James Gunn, and what he kept talking about with Marvel is The Dirty Dozen.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
It's perfect sense.
Yeah.
A bunch of problematic people who end up becoming a team and a family, Yeah,
except you don't really have
There's no Lee Marvin.
There's no Lee Marvin, although I would say maybe Gamora, because she's such a hard ass. She's also got her own thing. So yeah, maybe. Yeah.
And it sounds like, and we'll obviously talk about them as we go through, the songs were part of this process from the very beginning.
Yes.
Because he had this idea for using 70s songs, and he just went to Billboard and got a huge track list of all the biggest songs of the 70s, and he was listening the whole time he was writing, and frequently the song was the inspiration that helped him figure out how to write a scene,
Yeah, and it's always fascinating with soundtracks, especially soundtracks that are collected. And this is essentially what this is, collated. This is essentially a mixtape, right?
Yeah.
And so in when this movie comes out, right, 2014, the 70s music was kind of making a mini resurgence. The soft rock stuff, like people were getting Sirius XM. It was starting to come back, the 70s music, and you were seeing it being used and heard in commercials and TV shows and movies. So it kind of made all the sense in the world for him to go into this place and grab these songs that are signature songs of the 1970s / yacht rock / soft rock, and I thought, it was a really smart move. I've never bought the soundtrack because I have all those songs, right? I've never felt the inclination to buy the soundtrack because I've always had those songs and always loved those songs. So that was such a great gift to see in the choosing of the song. And when it comes to the script, I mean, to be fair, of course, to James Gunn as well, he claims that he rewrote the script that Nicole Perlman had eventually settled on, and he changed some of the characters and moved some stuff around. So just to be fair to him, it's Nicole who got this whole thing going, but it is James who comes in and writes his version of the script that he thinks works better for the movie itself, so.
It's interesting because the last film we did was The Fly.
Yes.
And where there was a writer who wrote the initial version, and then they hired a director who part of his deal was that he got to rewrite the initial version.
Yeah.
It's interesting because in that case, when it came to the WGA, where they had to investigate to see who got the credit, when it came to that, David Cronenberg insisted that the initial writer get joint credit with him because his feeling was, I would have never come to do this if he hadn't written the first script.
Right.
And I love James Gunn, and I'm not saying this is a criticism of him, but this ends up being in the opposite situation.
Yes.
Where WGA comes in, they say Nicole Perlman should get joint credit, and he was upset about it. Yeah. I mean, Nicole's the one that came up with creating Star-Lord as a Han Solo type approach. It's James who came in and made him set in the 1980s and 90s and was into 70s music. So those are those things that you make the adjustments on. But yeah, I don't know. I love James, but I also think he's got a very healthy ego, and at times it's burned him in the ass, and at other times it's led him to success, like with a movie like this. So,
you got to take everybody as a whole. Just like we just mentioned, Joss Whedon, certainly a problematic person for a lot of reasons, but look how he helped James Gunn to start this process and deliver a film that, as you said, Stephen, I certainly echo, is one of the best of the MCU movies. So it's a very strange world with a lot of different situations, and you've got to deal with them as you see fit in your own personal way,
Well, I mean, I think we could take a lesson from the movie, because this is a movie about a whole bunch of characters who are messed up and do things that are mistakes in all sorts of ways and have value systems that are problematic at best. And yet we can still say that they're awesome and that we love them and they can be heroes, you know?
Yeah.
And at least for this film, I would like to continue, particularly, you mentioned at the beginning of the show what's just happened in this country and our fears and all that stuff. And I want to go forward with a Guardians of the Galaxy style hope that there can be people who do things that make me mad, but they can still be good people and be awesome in lots of ways.
Let's hope so. I agree.
So speaking of which, would you like to get into the film?
Let's do it.
So we start, it's Earth 1988, and we start right with that music that we've talking about. And the first song that we hear is I'm Not in Love by 10cc.
I'm not in love, so don't forget it.
Now, this is one of my favorite songs from the 1970s. I remember this being one of the first songs that I was like just mystified by the construction of the song, with the different voices playing all around it and what have you. It was such an interesting type of song. The song came out in 1975. It was a number one hit in the UK. It hit the top 10 in the United States. It's sung by a British group, 10cc. The band members, Eric Stewart, Graham Goldman, Kevin Godley, and Lol Cream all came together to make the song. And it was inspired by Eric Stewart's wife saying that, "You don't tell me that you love me enough." So it was like he wrote the song off of that, but it was Godley and Cream who created the style of the song. And remember, Godley and Cream break off from 10cc in the 1980s, and they have that song Cry. If you guys remember that song, You make me wanna cry. That's Godley and Cream.
By the way, that was beautiful. Beautiful rendition. Thank you.
Thank you. But I will say one last thing about the song, which I think is great. Axl Rose of Guns N' Roses cites this song as the song that meant the most to him as a teenager. It was so nonchalant and so cool, is what he said. So interesting.
Okay, that's fascinating right there.
Right.
That's fascinating.
He sounds nothing like 10cc. Yeah.
And what we see is that this is Awesome Mix Volume 1. And we see this kid listening to his Walkman, looking sad as the camera is pushing in on him.
Steve, did you have a Walkman?
Of course.
Yeah.
I remember. So people listening to that, they have no understanding of what I'm going to say, because everybody walks around with headphones. We have all the music, everything we want at all times. We didn't have that when I was a kid. There was a cassette. We had one of those cassette players that were the sort of horizontal one where you push down on the buttons and had a little tiny speaker.
Yes.
And so because I worked as a gardener when I was from like 10 years old to like 13.
Wow.
And I did weeding and washed people's cars. And that's how I made money as a kid. And, and so I would go with that cassette player and play it wherever I was. I play my Billy Joel, I play my Beatles, I play my Paul Simon, and go and garden. And the day that the Walkman, not the day that it came out, I remember the first time there was a Walkman, and I put those headphones on my head, and it was like the greatest musical experience in the world, because I'd been listening to this tiny speaker playing across the yard while I was mowing lawns, and now I could put the headphones on. It was amazing.
Yeah. I have an affinity for Walkman for this and for headphones. This is where it started. You get those little foam ear.
The foam one, yeah.
Yeah, the foam covers on I had a Sony Walkman. I had that. I had to save up a whole year working to get a Walkman because we were poor. I mean, we grew up poor in my house, and I'm no shame saying that. And so my dad and mom couldn't buy me a Walkman, until Christmas. But I wanted a Walkman because you know what? I wanted to be cool. I wanted to have a Walkman. And so I saved up. I worked jobs there at the mall so that I could, and some odd jobs at home so that I could make money to buy the Walkman. And I remember when I put that on, that my entire life changed. And I have been obsessed with headphones and music ever since. I currently have 6 pairs of headphones in my home. I have one for the bathroom, one for the bedroom, one for the living room, one for the office, one for outside, and one for working out. literally, this is what I have because I must have music in my ears or headphones on all the time. And I've developed a bald spot on the top of my head because I wear headphones all the time. And
So all of yours are over the head.
yes,
Not,
I like over there because they actually shut out the world better than the ones that are inside my ear for me. So yes, so this is I had Walkmans of every variety, then Discman, and then MP3, then the iPod, and then what we have now is I just use my iPhone. But yeah, I was in love with music through this way, and then flipping it over, and it was so great. And when you could do mixtapes, oh man, it was the best. Walkman were the best.
so I now know that our next Cinephile short, we have an entire topic to talk about headphones and Walkmans and that is clear because I could go on and on because as you know, I'm always mine are the little AirPods that I'm always got with me and that I listen to constantly, but we will save that for a Cinephile short. What I will say that is important, another thing that just really doesn't exist is the mixtape. There's something very special. Yes, you can send someone your Spotify playlist.
Yes.
And that might be the greatest playlist anyone's ever heard. And that might be awesome and an expression of your love or your care, whatever it is, you could do that.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like a mixtape,
Yeah. I remember with Sarah, our friend Sarah, when she went to Paris in the early 2000s, I made her 10 mix CDs.
10
take with her. Yeah. Because I always loved making her mix CDs. She always loved my mix CDs because I was always introduced her to new music. And so I remember making 10 of them for her because she was going to be gone for like 2 months or something like that. And so I sat there for like days building the mix CDs for her. And it was a great assignment because I loved making mixtapes when I was a kid for myself and of course for girls when you were interested. Sarah and I never had that relationship. We were always really, really good friends. But with women and teenage girls that I dated when I was a teenager, like I made them cassette mixtapes when I had feelings for them, whether it was right or wrong. And if you know what I mean, like whether they had interest in me or not, I would still do it. So yeah. So, I just like doing it. So.
And that will be our second Cinephile short that will be available both on patreon.com/the Cinephiles and Apple Podcasts, which is the art of a mixtape with specific attention paid to the film High Fidelity, which is a movie I'd like to do on the Cinephiles at some point anyway.
I would love to.
So we have two upcoming shorts. One is the world of headphones and portable audio, and the other is the art of the mixtape. Come join patreon.com or Apple Podcasts to check them out.
Bang.
We have gotten 8 seconds into the film.
Yeah, we got to do a better job. I apologize.
Again, never apologize. But what happens next is that this kid's grandpa comes up, who's Greg Henry, and I'm now going to say a thing that I'm going to say throughout this entire film, which is James Gunn says, I love Greg Henry. He's a good friend of mine. He's been in all my films.
Yeah, he was also in 5 Brian De Palma movies. So in essence, he got passed on from one generation of director to the next generation of director. And some people may remember him from one of my favorite Mel Gibson movies, Payback. He was a series regular in ABC series Scandal and The Killing on AMC, the American version of The Killing. He was great in that as well. I love Greg Henry. And the young Peter is played by Wyatt Oleff, who was young Stanley Uris in It Chapter 2 recently. And he was a series regular on the recent Apple TV series City on Fire. So a kid who's worked consistently since Guardians of the Galaxy.
It's just a silly face.
Your mama wants to speak with you. Come on, Pete. Take these full things off.
I love the little details, like you hear the thin, reedy sound of the music coming off of the headphones after he takes them off. I think those are the little details of filmmaking that make for good movies.
Agreed.
And they're walking. We realize that we're in a hospital. He puts the Walkman in his backpack, and we move past the family to Mom, who is lying in the bed, looking incredibly beautiful and incredibly sick, bald because of cancer and all that stuff. Yeah. It's just all beautifully filmed.
Luminescent. She absolutely looks luminescent. Yeah. This is Laura Haddock, who is playing Meredith Quill, and Laura is a British actress. Some of you, and I remember her from Transformers: The Last Night. She was also...
I don't.
Yeah, fair. She was also in the most recent Downton Abbey movie. She was in the Netflix series The Recruit. And she works consistently on the other side of the pond a lot, and then occasionally does stuff here on this side of the pond as well. But a very good actress, and interesting choice here early in her career, getting this role and seeing how it was going to play out over the next 2 installments of Guardians of the Galaxy.
And the first thing she asks him about is, why has he been fighting with the other kids at school? And we hear that the other kids were killing a frog and he went to defend it. And I like that little detail because even then he is defending the weak. He is standing up for, something that can't stand up for himself.
And we see the black eye, right?
Yeah.
We see the black eye on his face as well, which is interesting.
You're so like your daddy. You even look like him. And he was an angel.
And this is all stuff that went totally by me, all the dad stuff. But it's all in here, which is great.
Yeah.
She says she has a present. He hands him this wrapped present, which Grandpa puts in the backpack.
You open it up when I'm gone, okay?
And it's so like, oh, she's not just sick. She's about to die.
Yeah, right? Oof.
When I first showed this to Jackson, and he was little, I said, hey, you know what? Maybe skip the opening scene because it's really sad. And so we skipped this scene.
Oh.
He saw it later on.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to traumatize him with this moment, know.
It's a painful moment. So well done. I mean, what a gutsy decision to start a movie like this that's full of fun and jokes and, coming together and heartwarming stuff with the death of the mother of the main character, of one of the main characters. It's heartbreaking.
Your grandpa is going to take such good care of you. At least until your daddy comes back to get you.
What I realized much, much later was, in fact, his daddy was coming back to get him, not in person,
right?
But he had sent someone to get him right now at this moment.
Yes.
That is what's happening.
Well, and you can tell by Grandpa's reaction, like he's not happy with how this all has gone down.
No.
And had his own suspicions about probably Ego the Living Planet since the beginning. And so you can see there's a little bit of uncomfortableness here.
And then she says,
take my hand.
And he moves away.
Peter.
And he doesn't want to do it.
Pete, come on.
Take my hand.
And that is when she flatlines. It is brutal.
But it's essential, right? Again, it's gutsy because as tough as it is to start a movie like this, a child not holding the hand of his mom as his mom dies, that's a guilt you will probably never get over. And so you carry that with you. So we as human beings watching this movie, we immediately are sympathetic to the kid. We immediately are like, oh no. And we have sympathy for him from the beginning. So it's kind of a really smart way to give you character building and to make the audience immediately care about this character as he gets. So when he gets older and when Chris Pratt shows up, we're already invested and care about him surviving,
It's funny, when we did The Natural recently, we were talking about the sins that you take with you and forgiveness and holding on to things. And Glenn Close, it's funny, Glenn Close is in both of these movies. Glenn Close says to him, you were just a kid, like we didn't know anything. And this one, even more so. I mean, how old is Peter? He's 11?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah.
A little kid, and it was scary and his mom was dying and there's hospitals and everyone's looking and but he isn't going to forgive himself ever.
No!
It's me.
No!
You have to stay here, please.
Everything goes into slow motion and Peter runs. Runs outside. It's foggy. He collapses down on the grass. He's sobbing. This alone would be hugely emotional.
Yeah.
And then, out of nowhere, there's a huge sound, a huge light. Pete looks up, there's a spaceship, and he gets beamed up. What an amazing opening to a film.
Yeah. I mean, again, right from the beginning, what you put the character through, and then boom, you remove him from the situation. So now we're invested in the mystery of this as well as sympathetic towards the character. So yeah, great stuff.
And this is about 3 minutes.
Yeah.
That's efficient filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
And then, only then do we go into the Marvel title. Yeah. And this, in all the previous movies, I believe the Marvel, title, credit sequence, whatever it is, came first.
Okay.
And it was Kevin Feige's suggestion to put it after he gets picked up by the spaceship. And I think it makes so much sense to put it there.
I agree.
And then we're out in space. We see a title that says 26 years later, and we are on Morag, abandoned planet.
Morag is an oceanic planet located in the Andromeda galaxy at the eclipsing binary star. And I'm not going to give you the numbers. That's way too long. but some of the inhabitants of this planet were the Orlani and aquatic, which are aquatic crocodile-like creatures, which we see later on in the scene here. The Morag was wiped out by a global warming catastrophe. Sometime prior to their demise, the inhabitants of Morag built a temple to guard the orb. That's what we see at the beginning in this sequence here. An artifact which contained the Infinity Stone. Following the warming, Morag became entirely covered in oceans. However, every 300 years, the sea lowers and the temple is made accessible. So he is coming essentially like Halley's Comet.
Or Brigadoon, John.
Oh, yes! Brigadoon. Yes.
So what I love about that and what you just explained, and this is what James Gunn did throughout, is that every one of these civilizations he thought about, and some of it came from him and some came from other sources, but they really thought through what makes this particular civilization unique. And I think that idea, like, oh, it's covered in water except for one moment every 300 years is really pretty cool.
Yeah, agreed.
We see this small figure walking. There's eruptions everywhere and water shooting up, but there's these geysers. We're looking at all these ruins. The figure has these glowing eyes in this mask, all of which looks really cool. And I love the technology too. He pulls out this device that it doesn't work, so he has to shake it. That's a great detail.
Yeah.
And what it does is essentially projects the past of what used to be there on these ruins. All very, very cool.
Showing the civilization that used to be there.
Yep. By the way, I love this version of the Star-Lord outfit.
Yeah.
I think it's a great design.
Agreed.
And he taps his helmet and the faceplate disappears. This is like the Tony Stark thing. This is classic Marvel technology. And there we have Chris Pratt. So here are some of the other people. There are many people considered for this role.
I'm sure.
Joe Edgerton, Jim Sturgis, Eddie Redmayne, Zachary Levi, Adam Brody, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, all considered for this part.
Wow. And because this is Pratt like coming out of Parks and Rec. This is Pratt. I think he had done
he had done Moneyball.
Yes.
And he had done one other one, I think.
Zero Dark 30.
Zero Dark 30, right.
Yes. With Joel Edgerton, ironically. He was on the team with Joel in Zero Dark 30. So this was a coup for him to get the role. And honestly, all the names you mentioned, I don't think any of them would have been able to walk the line of pseudo leader, sympathetic character, funny, and also dramatic when called upon. This is a fantastic performance from Chris Pratt.
I think it's so good. And I think what's really interesting too, I remember, because I've listened to the Parks and Rec podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And for the first season of the Parks and Rec podcast, they had Rob Lowe on.
Oh, nice.
And Rob Lowe basically told this story about Chris Pratt. He basically said, listen, if you really want to be a movie star, you can't be this fat. That is what he told him. Because Chris was a little heavy.
It was yeah.
And that it was just like dude, you say that you want this. This is what is required.
Yeah.
And so after, he lost some weight for Zero Dark 30 and Moneyball.
Yes.
And then he's like, okay, I'm going to do this thing. I'm really trying to be a movie star. It sounds like, and I don't know any of the details, but he auditioned for two very big films that came out in 2009.
Yeah.
Didn't get either of them. And it was bad for him. And those two films were Star Trek, I can only assume the James Kirk role.
Of course.
And Avatar.
Oh, wow. So the Sam Worthington role.
That's what I assume.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure, I don't know what the biggest audition you ever had was, but I certainly know people who went in for these kinds of roles and had to go back and go back and go back. One of the guys who's in The Assistants, he auditioned for Thor, he auditioned for Captain America, he auditioned for Superman, because he's a big, tall, strapping, big guy.
Yeah.
And basically he was the guy, and this is something that casting people do, is that you never want to just bring in your first choice. So you always bring in multiple choices, and you will frequently bring in a big star, a decent sized star, and a lesser person. So you really want the big star.
Right.
Which means that the lesser actor has to come in over and over and over again for the big part that they're probably never going to get.
Yeah. And they talk about it, right? Actors talk because it's just like everything else. You only look at the successes that people have, but there's a lot of losses before they get those W's, and certainly being friends with Shannon, I know he's been up and even recently been up for slightly bigger roles now. And we get the messages about whether he got them or not and how many times he had to go back and get those kinds of things. I never had that experience because I've never been close to anything really, really big. The only biggest thing I've been close to was voiceover wise was in Steven Universe. I was one of the final 2 or 3 for the dad to voice the dad. That would have changed my life.
Yeah.
I mean, financially, status wise, I could have booked way more animated shows after that, but I didn't get it, unfortunately. But like I worked my ass off to get, and I came back 4 times to audition for that thing. And in the end, they went in another direction. And, it sucked, but I really wanted that one. But yeah, I've been there and understand that. And it makes sense what Rob Lowe says. Listen, don't get it twisted. Chris Pratt could have been a character actor for the rest of his career just fine. But he wanted to be a movie star. And if you want to be a movie star, it's a lot of sacrifice. And it's a lot of food sacrifice for sure. What you have to do in order to stay in certain shape. And you will learn to not even appreciate food because you have to eat the same kind of stuff to keep you in the certain body type, So, and we now see how Ozempic is going through Hollywood because people are using that to lose weight. And it's the pressure to stay in a certain body look so that you can keep booking things, unfortunately,
Well, one thing I learned in my 30s, and I'm sure you learned a similar lesson, was, I'm not going to tell my mom about any job I might be up for.
Oh, yeah.
Or any opportunity that might be coming or whatever I'm working on. Because then not only will she ask me, and my dad will ask me regularly about how's it going with the thing at Sony? How's it going with this thing? But they will tell all their friends.
Yep.
And then all their friends will ask me. And that just means that I have to tell them over and over again how I failed.
Yep.
Or how it's not happening or what I don't know anything.
Yeah.
Oh, and I just this is horribly painful. I'm not going to speak about any of these things anymore.
Yeah, I ended up telling my agents not to call me anymore unless I booked it. Don't tell me I'm on a veil. Tell me if I booked it. That's all I care about.
Because it's just so painful.
Yeah, it is super painful.
So it sounds like that's where Chris Pratt was at this point.
Wow.
And Sarah Finn, who's the casting director, is really pushing him on James Gunn. And James Gunn had seen Parks and Rec, and he's like, that doesn't seem like this guy. And finally she said, no, you have to have a meeting with Chris Pratt. James Gunn has a meeting with Chris Pratt and goes, oh, this is the guy. So we see him on this planet. He reaches into his pocket. He pulls out the headphones. We see the camera tilt down, so he switches on the music that's sitting on his belt, and we get Come and Get Your Love by Redbone.
Yeah, Redbone. This song is one of my favorite songs, and it's taken on even more significance because my life partner is Native American. And this song, Redbone, is a Native American band. They were the first Native American band to reach the top 5 on the Billboard Hot 100 with this song. It spent 18 weeks in the top 40 and landed as the 4th most popular song on the Hot 100 in 1974.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it made because of this movie, it had like a 4 to 5 year rebirth. And it hit like 100 to 116 in France on their charts in 2015 or whatever. And so it had a whole new life after it came out because people associated this opening sequence with the song. And so it made them like the song even more or reappreciate the song again. And even there was a new music video that came out just a couple of years ago that you can watch that is really well done and that honors the Native American heritage of the band. So it's a song that has a lot of significance. So I love that he used it in this opening.
We have said multiple times that the greatest needle drop directors in film history are Martin Scorsese and Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
I think James Gunn gets to go on that list.
100%, especially because the soundtrack became a massive hit. So he knew what to do and where to put these songs. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and like both of those guys, it isn't just taking a piece of like a happy piece of music and combining it with a happy moment, or a sad piece and combining it with a sad moment. It's frequently combining things that don't fit together at all intellectually. And yet you see them and this moment is so great because it was so sad. We watched Mom die. Because he pulls on the headphones, we go, oh, this must be the grown-up kid.
Yeah.
We make that connection, and then that music comes in, and particularly there's that beat, and there is the big Guardians of the Galaxy title that comes on screen, and it's so much fun. And if that wasn't fun enough, just the music, now Chris Pratt starts dancing.
Which, of course, is a plant for the finale of the movie. So just smart to slide it in here and call it back all those minutes later at the end of the movie.
And it is taking someone there aren't that many Chris Pratts out there that can do this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Of being completely free to be ridiculous.
Yeah.
You're on an alien world. Your name is Star-Lord. And there's weird creatures around and you grab one and use one as a microphone to sing into. I mean, that's ridiculous and awesome.
Agreed.
And there are all sorts of little details that are so great. And one of them is he has to get across this, this chasm, and he uses his rocket shoes to do it. Does he land perfectly in a superhero pose? No, he's a little bit off balance. Everything is a little bit hard.
Because I also think we're catching Star-Lord at the beginning of his breaking out from the Ravagers. This is Star-Lord finding his own voice. I mean, this is kind of similar to everybody in the film. They're all from, like you said, they're all kind of damaged people. They're all from tough upbringings, but they're also at the stage in their lives when they want to find their own voices. Drax is wanting revenge so he can move on from the death of his wife and his child. Gamora is wanting to break away from Thanos. Rocket and Groot want to break away and become successful in what they're doing in terms of the bounty hunting stuff. And here is Star-Lord or Peter Quill trying to break away from Yondu and the Ravagers. So it makes sense that they're not steady yet. They're not quite the full-on heroes yet that you're going to see them become. Yeah.
And as he's coming up to this huge ruin where we see purple light, obviously purple is going to be an important color as we go forward, a whole bunch of other ships land, and there is Korath, Jimon Honsu.
Yeah, Korath was a geneticist who founded and led the Pursuer Project. He was also a member of the Star Force. This is how deep this goes. Korath first appeared in Quasar number 32 in March of 1992. I have no idea what the fuck Quasar is. By Mark Grunwald and Greg Capullo. Those names I know for sure in comics. He ended up in this movie. He's an agent of the Kree Empire, and he developed cybernetic warriors for the Kree militia down the road, and is a special operative for the Supreme Intelligence, which of course will find the Supreme Intelligence in Captain Marvel. So great to use Jimon Honsu. I've never not enjoyed Jimon Honsu in anything, and I love now he has achieved so much that he is now producing projects, hunting down projects, has a big, strong production company that he wants to put in motion for a number of projects, and I think is great. Jimon Honsu now becoming a voice, and he's very clear that he didn't get a lot of credit in Hollywood. No matter how many things he was in, people really overlooked him as a person and as an actor, and it took him a long time because he was coming from modeling. It took him a long time to get the respect that he wanted to get as an actor. So I love this about him.
Yeah, he's never not been good. Every time I see him in a movie, I'm always happy he's there. This is how he decided to do this one. He said at the time his son was 4 and his son was a big superhero fan. Loved Spider-Man, Iron Man, Batman. Mm-hmm. And one day this 4-year-old kid comes up to his dad and says, "Dad, I want to be light skinned so I could be Spider-Man because Spider-Man has light skin."
Oh, wow.
And this is why Jimon Honsu decided to be in a Marvel movie.
Wow. Oh, really?
Yep.
Damn, that takes that little twist of my kids love Marvel stuff and I just thought it'd be fun to be in Marvel stuff so I could be here to my kids. He takes it to a whole nother level by talking about, I want them to be able to see that someone as dark as me could be in a film like this. That is awesome. That is so awesome.
So Peter has, and there's and James Gunn talks about it, there's such a little bit of a Raiders of the Lost Ark feeling about this, that he's come into this place. There's this altar. There's some glowing orb that's in this thing. He puts down this device that sucks it out of this thing. And then we hear,
"Drop it now!" Hey, cool, man. No problem. No problem at all.
This, by the way, it wasn't Peter Quill's first day shooting, but it was the first day that Chris Pratt actually had dialogue.
Oh,
so this is his first dialogue scene.
Right on.
And immediately, what I love is that they wrote his language like the language of a kid who was 11 in 1988 on Earth, and that's where his speech patterns got locked in.
How do you know about this?
I don't even know what that is. I'm just a junker, man. I was just checking stuff out.
You don't look like a junker. You're wearing Ravager garb.
It's just the outfit, man. Ninja Turtle, you better stop poking me.
It's so funny. And we hear that his name is Peter Quill.
Hey, you know what? There's another name you might know me by.
Camera pushes in dramatically on him, and he says,
Star-Lord.
And Korath goes, "Who?"
Star-Lord, man. Legendary outlaw.
This is going to be one of those episodes where I just feel like I'm going, this is so funny. Like I don't have a comment really, except that I just like it and it's funny.
And we should say Star-Lord was created by Steve Englehart and Steve Gann in the comics. The character first appeared in Marvel Preview number 4 in January of 1976. He was originally the son of Human Meredith Quill and Spartoy Jason, J without the A, son, and assumes the mantle of Star-Lord, an interplanetary policeman. So that's kind of his beginning in the comics and where he comes from. Obviously, his origin and his overall style is adapted for the MCU, but that was kind of the beginning of the character.
And this is not getting him anywhere. And so he goes, forget this. And he just kicks this ball into them, disintegrates some guy. He draws, shoots at Korath, who goes down, picks up the orb. Korath gets up with a big gun. And this is a classic Star-Lord move, is he falls backward and fires his little rocket boots and slides out of the way.
And again, when he lands, it's a stumbling landing, right? He falls, ass over tea kettle, so to speak, and gets up and runs. And Korath like jumps out. I love that they have Korath in the distance, jumping out of the hole loudly with a huge bang and running after a Quill. It's great.
One of the things that James Gunn said was he said that Peter Quill doesn't have any superpowers, but if he did have a superpower, it would be the power to screw something up royally and then instantly regain his composure and do the right thing. And I'm like, that's pretty good,
Yeah.
So he's running. He has some little triangle thing that sucks a whole bunch of guys together. We don't put a lot on it, but we just see these little cool ideas. Manages to get to a ship and just flies off laughing hysterically. And he gets hit by one of these giant gushers that knocks the power out of his ship. And now he's, reaching for his controls. He slams into the glass ceiling and he's trying to get the ship out of control. And this is just what James Gunn said. At the last possible minute, he gets the ship under the control and starts to fly away.
Yeah.
And then we hear
Pizza.
And this red woman wearing obviously his t-shirt, which says something about river rafting, climbs up, and this is Barit.
Yeah, this is played by Milia Kraling. She was in The Borgias, if you guys remember that series on Showtime. She was a series regular on FX's Tyrant, which I think a lot of people really liked. It went on for 2 seasons. But recently, she's been on the last 2 seasons of Emily in Paris on Netflix. We say it that way in our house like that. Oh my God, it's Emily. She's in Paris. We say it that way in our house. So, we make fun of that show all the time. I never watched an episode of that show, but the fact that it's gone 4 seasons, people clearly love that show on Netflix. But Barit is an actual character in the comics. She appeared in the Rampaging Hulk #1 in 1977, bruh, and was created by Doug Mensch and Walt Simonson, who, the two really good people. She also appeared in Rampaging Hulk #9. She's a Krylorian techno artist who used her alien technology to produce films concerning fictional adventures of herself and the Hulk. And most of the population is obsessed with her movies, leading her to her popularity amongst her people. She later travels to Earth, befriends the Hulk and Rick Jones, and encounters the criminal Jackdaw. So she made videos about the Hulk, even though she had never met the Hulk, being a hero, like a duo with the Hulk, and then eventually meets the Hulk down the road. So yeah, an interesting choice to use this character. And I think Milia Kraling does such a wonderful job in these scenes. It's so great.
There's something that was always said about George Lucas and Star Wars, and then later on, certainly about Ridley Scott and Alien, which is the idea of having the grounded, lived-in science fiction world rather than the pure, pristine science fiction world. This is such a great evolution of that idea of like, you could be a person that was kidnapped by aliens, has had this big battle to get this Raiders of the Lost Ark treasure, and also have some woman that you're kind of sleeping with at the back of your spaceship wearing your t-shirt.
Well, if he's Han Solo, Magnum PI, if he's styled off of these 80s guys, of course he's going to have some beautiful woman that he's hooking up with, and and we'll see later when he talks to Drax, he has a history of messing around with women. It's very Kirk-like in that way, Yeah, I love that.
His response is, Bree, look, I'm going to be totally honest with you. I forgot you're here.
He didn't even remember her name, which I thought was a nice moment too.
And then we see this big console cassette player, which has a troll and stickers and an American flag. And the song that is playing is Go All the Way by the Raspberries.
Yeah, and this is a song written by Eric Carmen. Remember Eric Carmen? Great songs he did as solo and part of the Raspberries here. This is from their 1972 self-titled debut album. It reached the top 5 on 3 principal U.S. charts. It was number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100, number 4 on Cashbox, and number 3 on Record World. I don't remember Cashbox or Record World, to be honest with you. The song sold 1.3 million copies, and there was a little bit of controversy with it in Britain because there were sexually suggestive lyrics in the song, and the BBC banned it. So they limited its success there in Britain. So yeah, there was an issue there for them for a little bit. And remember, Eric Carmen did All By Myself. Remember that song from the 1970s?
Right.
On the Dirty Dancing Starter, I get a song Hungry Eyes, which is one of my favorite songs from the late 1980s.
Well, there you go. I think it should be a general rule, whether you're on the planet Earth or in a galaxy far, far away, that you don't answer other people's phones.
Yes.
Because Yondu calls in and she goes, "Oh, you got a call." Bareed answers. And Yondu apparently is on Morag looking for the orb.
That's right. And this is Michael Rooker. You don't need me to tell you all who Michael Rooker is. Everybody knows who Michael Rooker is. But Yondu Udonta is a member of the Zatoan tribe and a Centaurian from Centauri 4. And clearly, as we find out, he is the guy that picked up Peter and started the Ravagers.
And strangely enough, James Gunn says Michael Rooker has been in every one of his movies.
Yes,
I'm telling you, it's going to happen so much.
Yeah.
Which is why James Gunn is, we talked about these directors that have this work with the same people, seem to have fun on the set, aren't angry or mean or nasty or demeaning. And James Gunn is one of those people.
Absolutely.
Is he a perfect person? No, he's not.
Yeah.
But he still loves his actors and he loves working with people that he cares about.
And they love him back, which is why when he was kicked off Guardians of the Galaxy for Volume 3, because of those tweets that resurfaced, because someone decided to out him from old tweets, the entire cast signed a letter saying they wouldn't come back to play the characters unless he came back.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting moment in the history of the MCU to see the actors flex some power because of their support for the director. So, yeah.
Well, and frankly, in a moment in the history of free speech.
Yes.
Is that I do not think that our lives should be destroyed for something that we said 15 years ago that's taken out of context.
I agree.
Well, where you at now, boy?
I feel really bad about this, but I'm not going to tell you that.
And we hear about the Ravager Code, and then we hear...
When I picked you up on Terra, these boys of mine wanted to eat you.
Yeah?
They ain't never tasted any Terran before. I stopped them.
And Peter hangs up on him.
He's probably heard this 100 times before.
Yeah.
He's probably heard it 100 times. Yeah.
I mean, it's basically your dad or whatever who said, when I was your age, or these are the sacrifices I made to put you got food on your, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Except instead of saying you have food on your plate because of me, they're saying you would have been food on our plates if it weren't for us. Which, by the way, is totally not true.
Right.
Because they were supposed to deliver him to his dad.
Yeah.
And anyway, so we're with Yondu and a bunch of the Ravagers, including Sean Gunn, who is James Gunn's brother, who not only plays Kraglin, but also does a whole bunch of other important stuff in the course of this movie.
Yeah. Kraglin is a Ravager who served as the first mate for Yondu on that ship there, yeah.
I told you when you picked that kid up, you should have delivered him like we had to do. He was cargo. You have always been soft on him.
You're the only one I'm being soft on.
And this is the first time we see Yondu's arrow.
Yeah. That arrow would be massive in the MCU going forward.
That arrow is one of the coolest weapons ever thought of in the MCU, period.
I agree.
We see ships flying towards this dark, huge stone giant ship called the Dark Aster, a Kree warship.
Yeah.
And when the floor opens up and we see this naked Kree, and this is our first introduction to Lee Pace as Ronan.
Lee Pace, a lot of people remember him from Pushing Daisies, which is one of my criminally canceled way too early shows. I mean, that was such a great show with him and, oh God, I forget the main actress's name, the British actress, but Kristen Chenoweth, and I think Chi McBride was in it as well. It's such a beautifully fun show. And then recently, Halt and Catch Fire, another one of my favorite shows that went on for 4 seasons that was on AMC. Really interesting show that explored the beginning of computer technology and trying to sell it to mass audiences. I thought it was a really great show. And then Foundation now on Apple, he's been a series regular on that as well.
And he has I'm going to say a bad guy speech,
Yes, the voiceover, yeah.
Where he's just talking about who he's going to punish and who he'll have revenge on. And they're anointing him with dust and painting his faces and then putting the giant, ridiculous helmet on him. And if the rest of the movie weren't so awesome, I would find some of the Ronin stuff just ridiculously comic booky.
I agree with you. I think he is the one slight negative in the movie is not only the character, but Lee Pace's performance is a little bit slight cheese for a character that's pretty unsettling in the comics. Yeah. Ronin was a character created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. A hell of a combo. He appeared in Fantastic Four number 65. And he is depicted as the supreme accuser of the Kree Empire, as we know him, Ronin the Accuser, a militaristic government of the alien Kree, and commonly served as an adversary for the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, and Guardians of the Galaxy. So he worked for this movie. And in the history of the comics, he was a supervillain for a long time, but then he kind of went face, to use a wrestling term, and became a much more noble and honorable figure, and ends up marrying the Inhuman Crystal in the comics, who was a princess of the Inhuman royal family. So Ronin, a big deal.
And there is a tied up Xandarian soldier or whatever.
You will never rule Xandar.
No. I will cure it!
Big hammer swing, and we see blood running through the rivulets of the ship. And then the other person we see as this horrible violence is going on is this very odd, silver and dark, almost robotic character, and that is Nebula, Karen Gillan.
Karen Gillan, fantastic actress. Those of you who are Doctor Who fans, and you've seen her now in a number of things, Karen Gillan, wonderful actress. But Nebula is one of the several children that were forcibly adopted by Thanos, as we find out in the MCU. After he killed her family, she was raised alongside Gamora and trained to be a warrior. Now, there's a big stuff with her in the comics, and of course, she's a big part of the Infinity Gauntlet, which they adjusted for the Infinity Saga that we tell in the MCU. But she's the one that defeats Thanos in the end in the Infinity Gauntlet. They changed that, kind of like they did with Days of Future Past. It was Kitty Pryde who went back. It wasn't Wolverine, but they changed it because you cast certain actors to play certain roles and certain things you want to tell. But I thought this was a great beginning for maybe one of my favorite characters in the MCU ever. I love Nebula, and I thought at the end there, Karen should have gotten nominated for Best Supporting Actress for her work in Avengers Endgame, because playing both those characters through those two movies, I thought she was incredible.
She's so good.
Yeah.
And like with Jumanji, where she plays something just completely different and totally fun. And she manages to be, it's what's throughout this whole movie is she can be scary and mean and nasty and also be heartfelt and serious and then really funny, you know?
And this is the gift. She's putting on a voice, but she's doing it well. Right? She's I will do this and I will do that. Whereas with Ronin, you won't ever do, it doesn't feel organically natural. Whereas what her voice does feels organically natural to the character she's creating. And I think there's the difference in the performances between the two,
I think James Gunn managed to create layers and complexity and humor in every single one of these characters except Ronin.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There's just nothing there. Yeah. It's just like, here's the bad guy.
Yeah.
And he wants to do bad stuff. And he's going to do it in a bad guy way.
Well, and this is essentially what was happening. People were, after 10 movies or 9, 10 movies, people were like starting to write these articles about the issue with Marvel villains other than Loki, that there's an issue here they need to fix. And Killmonger was the first, I think, villain that kind of showed that they could wake up from their mistakes here and make some changes.
And we hear from Korath, who's reporting about Star-Lord and that he's going to Xandar to meet someone called the Broker. And we see, listening to this, Gamora, Zoe Saldaña.
Yeah. Gamora and Zoe Saldaña currently now leading The Lioness, one of Taylor Sheridan's shows on Paramount Plus. I can't recommend that show enough. Zoe is such a great actress, and she's embraced her Latina heritage now a little more strongly by making the Enye a part of her name now, which I think is great. I love that. But certainly, an actress we've seen in numerous things. I was watching The Terminal the other night, and I totally forgot that she was in The Terminal. And so she's certainly someone who has worked her way up to this position that she's in now. But Gamora is the last of her species. For those who don't know, the species is the Xanhuberis. It's an interesting name. They were exterminated by the Badoon. Of course, in the MCU, it's Thanos who exterminates them. Thanos found her as a child and decided to use her as a weapon. She is raised and trained by Thanos, and to assassinate the Magus, the evil future version of Adam Warlock. And of course, we will see Adam Warlock at some point down the road here. So this will be interesting as it goes forward. But she earned the nickname, quote, the deadliest woman in the whole galaxy there in the comics. So there you go.
So it's funny. This was my reaction to hearing this little piece of information about her, is that she was excited to be green and she was excited to do the whole makeup thing and create a whole thing. And I went, but you were already blue in Avatar. And then I was like, oh, except there's no makeup there. That's totally digital. So even though like we see her playing these two alien roles, the experience for the actor is completely different.
Right.
Two other people considered for this role were Amanda Seyfried and Lupita Nyong'o.
Oh, man. Wow.
I mean,
I could see Lupita doing it.
There's very few roles I could not see Lupita. I think she's an astoundingly good actor. So
and I have to say, I don't want to give any short shrift to Amanda Seyfried because I thought she was incredible in Mank, and she's and the Dropout, the series that was on Hulu about that woman who created the blood stuff that you could test and it was all a lie, and she fooled Silicon Valley. I thought she was incredible in that series. Right. So she's great. It would have been Amanda Seyfried would have been a fun choice as well.
So here's one other interesting thing. She is neck and neck with Scarlett Johansson as the number one highest grossing actress in terms of the properties. So Sam Jackson has been in the highest grossing movies of all time. Like the total box office of all the movies he's been in is number one.
Right.
Number 2 or 3 is Robert Downey Jr. is next. And then it's Scarlett Johansson and Zoe Saldaña are the next ones in that ranking.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. And here's a question from one of our patrons, from Katie Gnar, who says, my question is about Zoe Saldaña. If you glance at her IMDb page, she has been in so many franchises and so many beloved movies, yet I still don't feel she's a household name like she should be. Maybe that will change with Emilia Perez this year, but how do you guys view her super interesting career? I've loved her since watching her, since I was a kid watching Center Stage.
Yeah, Center Stage was her first movie. And then people forget she was in the Britney Spears movie, Crossroads. And then she was in Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl. And as I mentioned, The Terminal. And then in Guess Who? Star Trek. She's Uhura in Star Trek. Colombiana was one where she was breaking out from it as well. Then Guardians kind of gets her going all over again. But it's a great point because if you look at her projects, since she took on the Marvel stuff, there hasn't been a lot of stuff that's been big where she's been highlighted necessarily as the lead. Amsterdam in 2022 just absolutely fell apart. And her Avatar stuff, that's it. Avatar and Marvel has really been the strong stuff that she's been doing. I don't think Emilia Perez, which is a very small film, is going to make her a household name if it's not already a household name. I don't think that's the thing that's going to do it. But I do think people know her more than they don't because of Avatar and Star Trek and Marvel. So I'd be really surprised. You may not sense she's a household name because Zoe doesn't seek the spotlight. Zoe doesn't seek the attention. Zoe's about the work. She's a very determined person. I've read numerous interviews with her, and she was very clear from the beginning what she wanted to be. And she adjusted. We talked about Chris Pratt. She adjusted her diet from the beginning of her acting career. Like tea, what kind of food to eat, how much of that to eat. She wanted to maintain a certain look so that she could be cast quickly in bigger roles as she got into the business. So she's a very methodical woman. And I think that's why she doesn't seek attention in that way. And I think Lioness is helping to make her a household name as well.
I think the fact that her two biggest roles are roles where she is either totally a 3D character or completely covered in makeup.
Good point.
Has led us to not really realize. I almost put it in a similar category to Andy Serkis. Andy Serkis is a fucking phenomenal actor. Period, top to bottom. And I don't think he gets the credit because so much of the time we don't see him as him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I know in Way of Water, Zoe Saldaña's performance is incredible.
So strong. So strong. Yeah.
So I definitely think she hasn't gotten I don't know, she maybe, as you say, maybe she doesn't want the spotlight in that sense, but I definitely think she has not gotten the attention that she really does deserve.
Mm-hmm.
Now we get into a conflict because Ronan wants to send Nebula to Xandar to retrieve the orb.
It will be my honor.
It will be your doom. If this happens again, you'll be facing our father without his prize.
I'm a daughter of Thanos, just like you.
But I know Xandar.
And Ronan turns his back on Nebula and gives the gig to Gamora.
Yeah.
And you could see just that little reaction shot from Nebula about their relationship.
And like you said, James Gunn does a fantastic job in this film showing you the conflicts and the relationships of these characters quickly in these exchanges, right? Ronan clearly is a leader who doesn't like to be contradicted. And said, when he shuts Nebula down, he's certainly very arrogant, ignoring a peace treaty and killing that Xandarian. And then Nebula is certainly, you can see a hint of jealousy at Gamora and anger. So sibling rivalry there that's brewing. So it's very interesting. And Gamora going at Nebula saying, she would fail. I'm better equipped to do it.
And we cut to Xandar, the capital of the Nova Empire.
Yeah, Xandar is the home world of the Xandarians and to many other species as the capital of the Nova Empire. It has a population of 12 billion. 12 billion. Imagine trying to feed 12 billion people, Steve.
I know, we're up to 8.
That's true, we are. And it is also located in the Andromeda Galaxy. So interesting place for Xandar to be.
And again, this is what we'll see on every location, every planet we go to. They've clearly, the production staff, James Gunn, have put thought into what is this civilization like?
Yeah.
How does it work? This place looks real nice. It seems like a nice place.
Yeah.
But what we hear as we're looking at this beautiful city is we hear this voice.
Xandarians. What a bunch of losers. All of them in a big hurry to get from something stupid to nothing at all. Pathetic.
Yeah, the great Bradley Cooper as Rocket here. I mean, dude, I had no idea this was Bradley Cooper. And even when I watch him in the behind the scenes do the voice, I'm still shocked that he's the one that does the voice. I can't pick out any Bradley Cooper isms in his performance. It's incredible.
It's funny when we did Nightmare Alley a couple of years ago for the Oscars, and then this year we talked about what was it called? The Leonard Bernstein movie?
Oh yes, Maestro.
Yeah. Maestro.
Yeah.
This is an unbelievably talented guy, and I put the voice of Rocket right up with one of his amazing things that he is capable of doing.
Right. Yeah.
Rocket, and we should say, and we'll get into it in more detail later, but Rocket clearly is a team effort to create this character.
Yeah. 100%.
Of which the capper, the final ingredient, is Bradley Cooper's voice.
Yeah. Yeah. And Rocket is a character that was created by Bill Mantlo and artist Keith Giffen. I know Keith Giffen.
Keith Giffen, yeah.
Fantastic. He's an intelligent anthropomorphic raccoon who is an expert marksman, weapon specialist, and master tactician. And his name and aspects of his character were inspired by the Beatles song Rocky Raccoon. And I remember for a long time, I would make that mistake when I would talk about it in 2014, 2015 about Rocket Raccoon. I would always call him Rocky Raccoon. So it was an issue I had when we were having discussions about Marvel. So, but yeah, a very strong character to bring into this MCU here.
And after he makes fun of some little kid, we cut to Stan Lee with a beautiful woman on his arm. And he says,
"Look at Mr. Smiles over here. Where's your wife, old man? What a Class A prevert."
It's one of my favorite Stan Lee cameos.
Yeah, agreed.
And then we finally see Rocket and we see Groot drinking out of a fountain.
Yeah, and Groot is a tree-like extraterrestrial humanoid known as Flora Colossus. And the initial incarnation of the character sacrifices himself, as we see later on in this movie, and that's kind of a trait of him throughout the comics. And it's just a fascinating character to bring into this particular MCU, don't you think, Steve? A tree-like character initially, you're like, wait, what's the concept of all of this? Why does this make any sense? But I mean, it does work here in the movie.
This is why I love movies, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, and I know I've said it before, and I know it always sounds weird when I say it. One of the things I love the most is seeing people come up with stuff that never in my wildest dreams would I have ever thought to do.
Yeah.
Like, it would never occur to me to have Rocket Raccoon and Groot as a team. Like, it's like I was drawn to Daredevil and The Question and Batman. And like, I could list 100 characters that I would be excited about dealing with before I get to Rocket and Groot. Like, and yet it's like, you know what it's like? It's like a perfect comedy duo.
Yeah.
It's like, and the one really that popped into my mind is like, oh, it's Penn and Teller, because you have one character who speaks and one who doesn't. Yeah. And you have this relationship. And in this moment with the fountain, they have a perfect, you see what their relationship is, because Rocket goes,
"Don't drink fountain water, you idiot. That's disgusting." Yes, you did. I just saw you doing it. Why are you lying?
Don't lie to me.
It's all so funny.
And real quick, I just want to add one more thing for Groot. He first appeared in 1960 in the Tales to Astonish number 13 and was created by Stan Lee, Larry Lieber, and Jack Kirby. Groot is the Dutch word for large, possibly referring to his stature and ability to grow in size. Then he appeared again in the Incredible Hulk Annual number 5 in 1976. And then in the Sensational Spider-Man number 1 of July of 1997, Groot was featured in A Nightmare of Young Peter Parker. And then he appeared in 2006 in the Nick Fury's Howling Commando 6-issue limited series. So my man's been around, is what I'm trying to tell you. My man's been around.
By the way, Larry Lieber, one of the creators, that is the brother of Stan Lee, because Stan Lee's real name is Lieber.
Oh, wow. Well,
yeah.
There you go.
And in the midst of all this, we get a notification on his device that someone with a price on their head has showed up. And there we see Quill's picture and that he has a 40,000 unit price on his head.
Yeah.
Quill enters this store, and there we see a great alien character who just reminds me of Joel Grey, I think. And this is the Broker.
Yeah, this is played by Christopher Fairbank. He was in The Fifth Element, but for some of you who maybe have eagle eyes, Christopher Fairbank was in 1989's Batman. And you say, what? Why is that a big deal? He is one of the two guys in the opening when Batman comes down and finds those criminals who've robbed the family.
Oh, and who are you?
Yeah.
In that moment?
That is Christopher Fairbank, who is saying, who are you?
Oh, wow.
He's the one who's like, there ain't no bat. There ain't no bat. That's Christopher Fairbank. And he is such a fantastic character actor. He's appeared in numerous things. And it's always fun to see him. And he's a British actor as well. So interesting to see him in Batman and in Guardians of the Galaxy. And you don't really sense a English accent in his portrayal. So great actor.
Where's Yondu?
Wanted to be here. Sends his love and told me to tell you that you got the best eyebrows in the business.
And Quill wants to know, what is this little orb thing?
Yeah. It's my policy never to discuss my clients or their needs.
Yeah, well, I almost died getting it for you.
An occupational hazard, I'm sure, in your line of work.
Some machine-headed freak working for a dude named Ronan.
And as soon as he says Ronan, there's a reaction. And he's like, nope, we're done. We can't do business. And he starts pushing him out. He's obviously freaked out. And again, this is how you get good exposition out, which is the guy is afraid, and therefore he explains.
A Kree fanatic, outraged by the peace treaty, who will not rest until Xandarian culture, my culture, is wiped from existence.
Come on there.
He's someone whose bad side I'd rather not be on.
What about my bad side?
Farewell, Mr. Quill.
And he pushes him outside.
Yeah. Quill's bad side. Yeah, okay.
And there, outside of the Broker's store, is Gamora.
Yeah.
By the way, the day they shot this, it was just super hot that day. Mm-hmm. And you have all these actors and all these extras wearing a lot of clothing and makeup and layers and crazy alien costumes, and they're all sweating a ton. And makeup is running around trying to, pat down the sweat, because that's what you have to do. And by the end of the day, James Gunn says, basically, everyone was just in their underwear between takes. They're just like, forget this. Just take off all our clothes. And they're all just sitting around in their underwear until they have to shoot.
That's great.
What happened?
This guy just backed out of a deal on me. There's one thing I hate. It's a man without integrity. Peter Quill. People call me Star-Lord.
And she's eating it right up. She says,
You have the bearing of a man of honor.
Well, I wouldn't say that. People say it about me all the time.
Chris Pratt's so funny.
Well, I mean, the interaction, both of them. This is smart direction, right? She's clearly a very confident assassin, and as we find out later from Drax, and Rocket, she has clearly killed a number of people. So her leaning against the wall, eating some sort of, it looks like an apple type of fruit, is relaxed because she does not fear this guy at all and does not think this guy is a challenge in any way, shape, or form. She underestimates him, and then she works on his ego. Why? Because she probably knows working on men and their ego is the way to go. And then that's how she tricks him. So the relaxed nature combined with Pratt's natural comedic instincts, I think works so well in their chemistry.
Well, and it's so funny because Peter Quill has moments of genius about him, but he's not the smartest guy all the time. You know what I mean? He is sort of shallow, and he's sort of self-involved, and he's all these traits. But because you have someone as likable as Chris Pratt, and because it's so funny, and because I think of the opening sequence where we watched his mother die, we really care about this guy, despite what those things about him that maybe aren't so great. You know,
he's good at thinking on his feet,
absolutely,
and trying to plan, but thinking on his feet when stuff falls apart. You know, The Penguin just finished on Max. Great,
dude, so good,
right? So good. But he is a guy who thinks he has plans, and he also wants to, achieve certain things or get certain kind of wealth. But he is good at thinking on his feet when his plans fall apart or when unexpected things pop up. But he's doing it in a criminal way. Peter Quill, although he's stealing the orb, his instincts are to be in a more good, to use them in a more good fashion. And so there's similarities between the two of them in that way, that they think on their feet, they plan ahead as much as possible, but they're good at troubleshooting when stuff falls apart.
Would never have occurred to me to compare the characters, but now that you have, you're 100% right. The difference is just what you say, is that inside the heart of the Penguin is an empty, dark place, filled with evil, and deep inside Peter Quill's heart is something really good.
Yeah,
and he's playing with the orb as he's talking to her, and naturally she kicks him in the chest, grabs it out of the air, and runs. And he immediately throws like this thing at her that wraps up her legs and trips her, and then they're fighting, and there's just like a fun overhead top-down shot as they're fighting at each other. It's really, really well choreographed. And he's about to do that same slide along the ground thing from his rocket boots that we established before, but she stops him. So it was set up in the earlier scene, and now it was changed in this scene. And she is on top of him and about to stab him, and then gets knocked off by Rocket.
Put him in the bag! Put him in the bag!
And Groot starts to grab Gamora. And he goes, no, not her. And what we get is all of them now going after each other, all of them doing cool stuff, all of them failing and doing stuff that doesn't work,
Yeah. And the thing is, it makes sense to have her shortcut Quill's moves because we've already had Quill established in his battle with Jomon Hansu, with Korath. We have to establish Gamora's abilities. So what's the best way to do that? Have her have the upper hand in the majority of the situations here with Quill in the battle and with Rocket and Groot. And of course, you're establishing what Rocket and Groot can do as well. So it makes sense the way they choreographed this battle. It's so smart.
So she gets away from Rocket and Groot, throws her knife, which knocks the orb out. She runs. Of course, she lands in a super cool pose.
Yes.
Fool. Should have learned.
I don't learn. One of my issues.
And we had seen that he had grabbed some device out of his belt before.
Yeah.
And now he attaches it to her, activates it, and she goes flying. And then Gamora attacks Groot. And man, her hitting him with her sword, she cuts his arms off and sticks in his belly. And it really hurts. And I really think there is sort of a whimpering, I am Groot, that we hear like way faintly as it happens. And it feels terrible.
I had arms just a few seconds ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like Rocket's like, they'll grow back.
They bag Quill, who manages to get away. And I love just the running with the bag around his feet. And Rocket draws just the ridiculously big gun and says,
I live for the simple things. Like how much this is gonna hurt.
And he fires. And I like just a little detail that it doesn't fire like a phaser or a blaster or a laser beam, that it kind of lopes over, it's like a lob.
Yeah.
And hits him. And he goes, Chris Pratt does perfect shaking seizing stuff as he goes down while Rocket laughs.
Yeah.
And then they're all hit by beams, and they're all grabbed by the authorities, and there is John C. Reilly.
Hey, if it isn't Star Prince.
Star Prince is so good. And he's legitimately wounded. Like Chris Pratt, Peter Quill is legitimately wounded that this guy won't remember who he was perfectly. You know?
Star-Lord.
Oh, sorry, Lord. I picked this guy up a while back for petty thefts. He's got a code name.
And I think John C. Reilly walks the weirdest fine line that is so perfect in this movie.
Yeah.
He's perfect casting because he's kind of a nice guy, but is still giving Star-Lord shit. And he goes,
come on, man. It's an outlaw name.
Relax, pal. It's cool to have a code name. It's not that weird.
It's not that weird. I love it. He's so good. He's like the older brother who needles you, but is still cool with you. Like, I love that.
And we're at Nova Corps headquarters where Glenn Close, the head of the Nova Corps, is talking to the Kree who are supposed to be getting Ronan under control and are not.
We signed your peace treaty, Nova Prime. What more do you want?
At least a statement from the Kree Empire saying that they condemn his actions. He is slaughtering children, families.
Now, she is called Nova Prime in the movie, but her actual name is Irani Rael. And she is the commander of the Nova Corps. And so she's, in essence, she's been in charge of the planet for a while. And clearly you see that there was a peace treaty. And it's what the Xandorian referred to when Ronan hit him with that hammer, that he was saying, we signed a peace treaty. So clearly the Kree are presented as some nefarious people who are doing underhanded stuff at different times that serves their purpose,
Yeah, I mean, they're just kind of going like, please at least say something. Can you at least make a statement or something? And he's like, no, you guys are on your own. And he disappears.
And then I think she calls him, what a prick or something. I think she
calls him a prick. Which is surprising.
Yeah, exactly.
And we cut to what I could only describe as the mugshot sequence.
Yeah.
A bunch of which is in the trailer. And it's really, really funny.
Gamora, surgically modified and trained as a living weapon. The adopted daughter of the mad titan Thanos.
And while she's there on screen, there's all sorts of details. And this is, there's so much in this movie, and we could call them Easter eggs, we can call them whatever you want, where it's like, it's going to go right by you when you're watching the movie in the theater.
Yeah.
But when you're home and you have a remote, well, you can pause and look at some of these details. It says cybernetic skeleton, ocular and respiratory implants, neurological system enhanced, regeneration implant. So we find all these details about Gamora.
Yeah.
And next we have Rocket.
Subject 89P13 calls itself Rocket, the result of illegal genetic and cybernetic experiments on a lower life form.
There's a whole bunch of crimes listed, and then the last thing it says is, warning, tendency to bite. And the other thing is James Gunn gives each of them a little thing. So Gamora rolls her necks, Rocket spits, and then we have Groot, who I love that he's so big that he kind of is beyond the space of the mugshot setup that they have.
Yeah, it's the dip down so you can see him, which I think is great.
They call it Groot, a humanoid plant that's been traveling recently as 89P13's personal houseplant / muscle.
And we see that he is the species Flora colossus.
Yeah.
Enhancements, none known, lots of crimes. And I love Groot coming forward and just sort of looking at the camera. And that is James Gunn. So what they did frequently as they're working with the CG people is they have someone on the set who's being Groot, who's dressed in a green outfit, to so that they can do a green screen effect with him. But then sometimes they'd just be shooting or they'd just be in post, and James Gunn's like, that's not quite right. And so he would just set up his iPhone and he would act out the part.
Oh, wow.
And then he would send the animators little video clips that he shot with his iPhone. And that's what this one of Groot looking at the camera is. That's just James Gunn and his iPhone.
Interesting.
Peter Jason Quill from Terra, raised from youth by a band of mercenaries called the Ravagers, led by Yondu Udanta.
That there's a translator implant on his neck, and they list his name as Star-Lord. Yeah. But while this is happening, Chris Pratt is doing a little gesture with his finger, rolling it, and then slowly rolls him up to flipping him off. And he says,
"Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know how this machine worked."
So we should say, Steve, For those of you who may not remember, there was a period where people were coming up with ways to flick you off, inventive ways to flick you off. And so this was like perfect timing to throw this joke into the movie because people would use the middle finger as like a makeup thing to put foundation on your face. And is that how this machine works? And rolling that over. And I hate when it does that, right? Which is, of course, all the way back to Top Gun with Goose doing that. So, yeah.
Well, and it's or like Breakfast Club, which young Peter Quill watch, where it's like, can you hear this? Do you want me to turn it up?
Yeah, turn it up. Yeah.
Like all those things. So the way this happened, so it was Chris's idea to do this finger thing.
Oh, wow.
And then it was when James Gunn saw it, and this is what happened on the set all the time, is Chris Pratt would do a thing, and then James Gunn would refine it, and then they'd work on it together. And James Gunn said, well, what if you did the thing, but you were surprised when it popped up? And he goes, oh, okay, I can do that. And then I forget who came up with, each of the lines.
Yeah.
And the last thing we hear is,
what a bunch of a-holes.
That's Peter Serafinowicz, who is playing Denarian Saul. Peter Serafinowicz is the Tick. If you guys remember him, he played the Tick for that series that lasted for a little while. But he is a fantastic British-born comedian, actor, voiceover artist. He's also been, of course, in Shaun of the Dead. One of my favorite Melissa McCarthy films, Spy, John Wick Chapter 2. He's been a part of the Rick and Morty universe. He does drama and comedy really well. He's got a face that works for both. And does a lot of voiceover work. So what a great actor here coming in right around the time when he's about to like kind of really work consistently and a lot in numerous projects here, establishing himself. So it's really funny. It's a good balance to John C. Reilly because he's much more of the asshole older brother, whereas Riley's much more of the
friendly, mellow older
Yeah,
brother.
yeah.
And we fly into the Kiln, which is the high security prison that is a big rock in the middle of an asteroid field.
Yeah, this is absolutely connected to the comics, so it was a nice move to use the Kiln here. And this is the scene that we saw when I was speaking about when I first got the glimpse of what Guardians of the Galaxy was going to be. This is the scene they showed us.
You're lucky the Broad showed up, because otherwise me and Groot would be collecting that bounty right now, and you'd be getting drawn and quartered by Yondu and those Ravagers.
I've had a lot of folks try to kill me over the years. I ain't about to be brought down by a tree and a talking raccoon. Old?
What's a raccoon?
What's a raccoon? It's what you are, stupid.
And I think this line is one of the keys to Rocket's character, which is
ain't no thing like me except me.
Yeah, right? Oh, so good.
Why is it so good?
I love it because it gives you a window into his character in that he is defensive, right? And it's so funny to watch this movie after you've seen 2 and 3, especially 3, when you see how Rocket became the way he became. This is a guy who was very caring, very loving, all about his friends, and he got fucked so hard. And so he's developed this outer shell where he has to let you know that he's not, you don't fuck with me. He does it, he overdoes it. But when you can see through it, he's doing it in a way that's actually kind of charming. And you don't actually see him as a bad person. And so, or a bad creature, I guess, for lack of a better term. So ain't no thing like me. It's his desire to be seen as different and unique. Because he was essentially a number in an experiment factory.
Right.
So it was so smart to have these little things. And maybe they knew this going in, the way they wrote it. I don't know. But to watch it now with all that information, you see his lines in a whole new light. So I think it's a great moment when he says that too and pushing back. It's good character work as well.
I think the degree of difficulty of pulling off Guardians of the Galaxy is so fucking high.
Yeah.
Because first of all, as we said at the beginning, you take a bunch of characters. Nobody knows any of these characters. So we don't have anything to help us. And then you're going, okay, we got a talking tree that only says 3 words. We've got this raccoon.
Right.
And we want to get all of you to feel for these characters quickly. And we really, really do. And ain't no thing like me but me is a line that like tells you, it tells you about his arrogance and his sense of humor and his grit and all of those things, which are all true. And it also is covering up his pain and his loneliness and his anger, a whole bunch of anger and all that stuff. And here's what's interesting is that story-wise, in terms of what is the basic essential story of Guardians of the Galaxy,
right?
It is exactly the same basic essential story as the Avengers, which is We have a bunch of people with a bunch of conflicts, and they have to find their way to work together and become a team.
Yeah.
That's the basic structure of both of these films.
Yep.
Agreed. The difference is that, and Avengers is good, and I like it, and we did it on the show, but it does not get better with age.
Yeah, I agree. It's dated, and some of the dialogue doesn't really work,
Well,
and ironically, a Joss Whedon film who got James Gunn into the MCU, and his dialogue still holds up 10 years later.
But it's not, I'd say it's more than the dialogue, which is that these characters of the Guardians are richer than the characters of the Avengers. And I'm not saying that the character of Steve Rogers in Captain America: The Winter Soldier is not a fantastic, amazing character. He is. I am saying that as portrayed in the Avengers, their conflicts become somewhat kind of petty,
Yeah.
And bigger, as opposed to what's going on with these people who are much weirder. These are much, much stranger people than the Avengers. They have much more pain. They have much more stuff going on. They're much more problematic, than the Avengers characters, but they hold up so well for me,
Yeah, I mean, I think I could push back a little bit and say, well, I mean, different things are expected from.
Yes, 100%.
Right?
Yeah, I agree.
But I hear your point, because there is angst, Tony's parents being killed by the Winter Soldier. There is angst and drama and stuff. But you're right. In terms of the film comparisons, the stuff they're going through in Avengers doesn't quite match the stuff they're going through in Guardians and how they come together. That's a fair point, I think. And a James Gunn Avengers film, that could have been really interesting to see. And who knows, maybe when he's done with DC, he swings back around and does an Avengers movie down the road, maybe 20 years from now. Could be interesting.
He still can do the Justice League.
Great points. Yep.
Yeah.
Shit. Yeah, that would be good.
So this orb has a real shiny blue suitcase, Ark of the Covenant, Maltese Falcon sort of vibe. What is it?
I am Groot.
So what? What's the orb?
I have no words for an honorless thief.
Pretty high and mighty coming from the lackey of a genocidal maniac. Yeah, I know who you are.
And so that reveals that people around here know who she is. Yeah, I love that Quill, not wanting to be embarrassed, pretends that he knows who Gamora is too, and goes,
"Yeah, we know who you are."
Who is she?
I'm Groot.
Yeah, you said that.
And this is when we find out that Gamora says that she was going to betray Ronan and sell it to a third party. Again,
I am Groot.
Well, that's just as fascinating as the first 89 times you told me that. What is wrong with Giving Tree here?
By the way, the Giving Tree, Shel Silverstein, most upsetting and horrible children's stories of all time. It's awful.
Shel loves to write those. Shel loves to write those kinds of stories, man. Yeah.
I cannot believe, by the way, that I didn't find out until the last 3 or 4 years that Shel Silverstein wrote A Boy Named Sue for Johnny Cash.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think that is
upsetting stuff. He loves to write
upsetting.
Dealing with children. Yes.
I mean, frankly, I read Where the Sidewalk Ends and A Light in the Attic over and over and over again as kids. And so many of those poems are horrible and bizarre.
Yeah.
Which makes sense why James Gunn would reference it, because that's his thing.
Right.
Well, he don't know talking good like me and you. So his vocabularistics is limited to I and am and Groot. Exclusively in that order.
And then we hear music, because there's this, one of the blue guards has the headphones.
Hey! Listen to me, you big blue bastard. Take those headphones off. That's mine. Those belong in Impound, that tape, and that player is mine!
So by the way, this guy, they just cast him because he was a big guy. Because Chris Pratt's a big guy, and so you needed an even bigger guy, which is why also Drax has to be huge and Groot, because Chris Pratt is big. And then he ended up being really, really funny. And so they used him a lot more than they thought.
Hooked on a feeling, Blue Swede, 1973, that song belongs to me!
Yeah, there were multiple versions of this song. B.J. Thomas had the original song in the 1970s, Hooked on a Feeling. This is Blue Suede, their version of it, right? Oh, maybe it was late 1960s, the B.J. Thomas one, but they're a Swedish pop rock group. I didn't know this until I did the research for the show here. I thought they were an American group. They're a Swedish pop rock group. They recorded this in 1973, and they used the Ooga Chaga introduction from the 1971 version of Hooked on a Feeling by Jonathan King, who had heard Johnny Preston's Running Bears song, and that's what inspired him to use the Ooga Chaga chant. So this is an amalgamation of multiple other sources that Blue Suede used in order to make their version of the song. And they tweaked the lyrics to remove the drug reference that's in the original version of Hooked on a Feeling. And this song reached number 1 in the United States, and it was ranked as the number 20 song for 1974. The opening hook, according to Record World, will have buyers crying for the Ooga Chugga record for sure. And this was also used in Reservoir Dogs, Steve. So if you remember that scene, they used this song in Reservoir Dogs as well.
The way this happens, it's so great. It's so filmic, which is that we hear the music sort of thinly in the background.
Yeah.
And then when it comes in fully is with him getting tortured and shocked. And so you have this great, upbeat, interesting song combined with these visuals. And this is, I mean, there is no other movie that uses music like Guardians of the Galaxy.
And it leads us into the Spawn.
Yep.
Of all of them getting essentially strip searched and put into their new prison garb and thrown into their cells. So it's a smart move to use it through the headphones and then boom, have it come over the entire movie. Yeah.
And sprayed with the weird orange goo. And man, you know, Chris Pratt's exercise regimen and diet worked out.
Clearly.
Because he's looking huge.
Yeah, Rob Lowe probably watched this movie. He's like, I fucking told him.
Yeah. And then we see also there's another great moment as this is going on, which is we saw him get hosed down by this orange goo, whatever that delousing stuff or whatever. And then he sees Rocket. And the moment of Rocket putting his clothes back on, and you see all the weird little pieces of metal and technology on him, and he's wet, you know, the wet raccoon, and looks really, really sad. Yeah. And you that I think we connect it to what we heard, that he was genetically and technologically modified during the mugshot, and then ain't nobody like me but me, and then Quill is looking at him and seeing, oh yeah, this guy's been through a lot.
Yeah.
We step onto a ginormous set as we go into the main room of the kiln. And, I mean, this is a huge, huge set. Tons of metal, real metal for this thing to be built. It's the biggest set by far that James Gunn had ever worked on. They all come in and they're, by the way, the production designer is Charlie Wood. And this is a key collaborator with James Gunn because Xandar, Morag, the Kiln, the Dark Aster, each of these environments had to look completely like their own thing. You know?
Wow. Yeah.
And when they really do, they are very convincing, as I believe that this is a real prison, you know, in this world. There's all sorts of craziness. The music is still playing, and then the music stops when we get hit by something because everyone is throwing stuff at Gamora and threatening her life.
Like I said, she's got a rep. A lot of prisoners here have lost their families to Ronan and his goons.
And then Quill turns into this big, huge blue guy who says, "Check out the new meat." And that is the voice of Nathan Fillion,
who would also work with James Gunn.
Same thing.
Yeah, Slither and other things. Yeah, he's always in a James Gunn movie.
And Groot comes up and sends 2 twigs up his nose, lifting him up.
Let's make something clear. This one here's our booty. You want to get to him, you go through us. Or, more accurately, we go through you.
This is the Rorschach moment from Watchmen.
Totally.
Right? Yeah. I'm not stuck in here with you. You're stuck in here with me.
And then we hear, I love that we hear it. We hear the sound of tearing blue skin.
Yes.
As Groot drops this guy to the floor, who is now just sobbing. And I love that Quill kind of looks around for a moment, assesses the situation, and says, I'm with them.
Yeah. The secret gift about the Guardians is they're all alphas in separate situations. Yet they come together and kind of make it work. But they're all alphas. And I think that's important to remember. There's no betas on this team. They're all alphas. Well, they choose to be beta in certain moments or choose to kind of hand over control or whatever to one or the other, depending on the situation.
I disagree a little bit, which is, or I'll say it differently, which is I will say, first of all, Groot is not an alpha. I think Groot is a beta.
What? I could not disagree with you more.
Groot follows Rocket's lead throughout everything.
Only because he wants to. He uses Groot. Rocket is a shield for him because he is naturally a rebellious guy, as we see when he becomes a child and then a teenager. He is rebellious. That's his.
Well, first of all, that's a different person.
No, it's the same Groot. It's Groot.
No, that is not the same Groot. Well, we'll have to discuss this at the end.
Oh my God. Okay.
That is not Groot. That is his son. That is a different person.
Okay.
All right. We're going to look this up.
Yeah.
We're going to check this out.
But either way, both Groots are rebellious. Both Groots do, like you drink in the water fountain.
Yes, I agree.
Look, he put his twig in. Rocket didn't tell him to do that. Groot did that, and then Rocket took the lead from what Groot did in that moment. So I think he is an alpha when he wants to be an alpha, but he doesn't need to be an alpha because that's the role Rocket fills. But when he needs to take control of a situation, he'll do it. And so for me, that's what. And we see him in multiple times in the series when he does that, whether it's father or son, which I guess we can debate at some point down the road. But like. Either way, the characteristics of Groot are similar, whether that's father and son or they're the same essential creature. And that is that he does what he wants to do when he wants to do it. And I think that's an alpha nature in certain ways. But it's just subjective opinion, you know.
Putting that aside for the moment, I actually think more than them all being alphas, because an alpha to me is a leader, a person who needs to be in charge of other people. I think they're all
see it that way, but okay.
I think they're all, well, that is literally like you're the alpha of the pack. You're the leader of the pack. You must dominate the other people to be the alpha.
Yeah, I don't see it that way. I just see alphas as people who have natural leadership capabilities. That's how I delineate an alpha. There are asshole alphas. That's a whole other thing. But I think alphas have that ability to lead, and you sense it and see it by how they can carry themselves in certain moments. Gamora's an alpha. Peter is an alpha. Rocket is an alpha, which is why Peter and Rocket battle for the control of the ship in 2. Drax is definitely an alpha, and I think Groot is an alpha as well. But I take your point in how you're presenting it. I just don't see it in the same way.
Now, the third topic of an upcoming Cine-Files short will be the definition of alphas. Because what I would actually have said, but I see clearly we're defining the word a little bit differently.
Yeah.
For me, they're all loners. They're all loners on some level that don't play well with others. Right. And that's part of why they what they have to overcome to become, this team.
Yeah. Like I said that earlier, they're each trying to find their own separate voices at these stages in their lives. But yes, loners for sure.
So we've kind of hinted at this and talked about it a little bit around it, but let's just to point out very clearly what's happening when we're shooting is that we have 2 main CG characters. This is, and they're 2 difficult CG characters. One is Rocket, which is difficult because fur is super difficult and it's not a human form. And the other is this huge character, Groot. And so what you have is on the set portion, you have 2 actors playing these characters. So one is a French mime whose name is Christian Godlewski, and he is playing Groot. So if you see, there'll be pictures of him in the green jumpsuit so that they can replace him later on. And he's got a big Groot hat on his head to make him even taller. And then Sean Gunn, James Gunn's brother, is on his hands and knees in a green suit being Rocket. And it sounds like, in particular, Sean Gunn is critically important to this movie.
Yeah.
Bradley Cooper I don't think he'd even been hired when they started shooting. There was no voice for this character yet. Is that Sean Gunn is sitting there acting, and Rocket has a ton of lines, acting with everybody. And so everyone on the set is building relationships with Sean Gunn as a character. From everything I understand, he was improvising as Rocket. He, like a lot of this character, the physicality obviously came from Sean Gunn. And part of it, I think, too, is that he really gets James Gunn's sense of humor and so understands how to kind of bring this to life.
Well, you said this earlier, right? That Andy Serkis, you made a comparison.
Totally.
Zoe Saldaña to Andy Serkis. I think the comparison is very apt with Sean Gunn. Because like Andy, he hasn't had a chance to lead a film. Zoe's actually led films and been a star of a TV show. Neither Andy nor Sean have necessarily had a chance to lead anything. So The behind the scenes work they do, though, is essential to the Planet of the Apes franchise and Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And in this side, the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise within the overall Marvel franchise. So, yeah, it's a great point.
So, and this is true teamwork. So we have Sean Gunn acting it out, and they have all the visuals from that the animators are using.
Yeah.
Then when Bradley Cooper was recording the voices, they filmed him the whole time that he's recording all the voices. So they have all his facial expressions.
Yeah.
And then they also had a pet raccoon named Oreo that James Gunn apparently became very good friends with. And there's lots of footage I've seen of him snuggling with this raccoon.
Yeah.
So they're studying that. And then James Gunn, as I said, is also recording himself on his iPhone doing physicalities. And one of the things they said was, unlike doing Gollum with Andy Serkis, that is a human-ish face. I mean, it's obviously not exactly human, but it's human adjacent.
Yeah.
Rocket is not. And so there really wasn't, they couldn't do just a direct one-to-one translation between what Sean Gunn did on the set or what Bradley Cooper did when he was doing the lines to make Rocket's facial expression. It wasn't that easy. It was actually super, super hard to bring this character to life.
Huh. Okay. That makes sense, because I mean, it's a character that it's so effective that you imagine it makes sense that a lot of really talented people were responsible for bringing it to life so well and making it work so well.
And unlike things like, we're 12 years after Jar Jar Binks. Like, unlike that, is there ever a moment in this movie that you looked at Rocket or at Groot and didn't believe that they were real?
No, not for a second. Whereas, like, we just saw the Nathan Fillion character.
Yeah.
That looks a little unreal. But Rocket and Groot, not even for a moment.
Not a second. Yeah. They're totally convincing to me. We have other prisoners yelling at Gamora. And I think Zoe Saldaña does a great job of being tough and trying to stay composed and not 100% pulling it off, but mostly pulling it off,
Yeah. But also, I notice an undercurrent of guilt.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
She knows
Totally
why they're mad at her, and she knows the things that she's done. And she's probably come to this moment, as I said earlier about finding your voice. She wants to break away from Thanos because now she can see the destruction and the hurt and the pain that she has caused, being an instrument of his will, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's all there. And one of the people watching her at this moment is Drax.
Yeah, Drax the Destroyer. This is interesting. Of course, this is Dave Bautista, early in his career, 2014. Dave was a professional wrestler. He was a multi-time champion in the WWE. One of the guys that when he said he wanted to get into acting, I myself was like, no fucking way. He's not going to be successful at this. And I watched some of his stuff when he first started out, those straight to DVD action films that, wrestlers do, like the Marine 13 or some shit, like Cena did, if you want to go back and see some bad Cena acting. And you're like, oh, yeah, I guess he can do this, and make a career out of this. The leap he has made, and beginning with this movie, then into the James Bond movie, and then, of course, Blade Runner 2049, the leap he has made as an actor is incredible. And as a fellow actor, watching someone who has gone to classes, respects the craft and has put time in to become a better actor, watching him in this movie, you see the beginnings of where Dave is going. Because it's deceptively, you think it's easy to play a dry guy that doesn't get any of the jokes. That is not easy to do.
No.
And his timing, his effort, while also maintaining the menace and the danger of Drax, this is an incredible early performance from a future damn good actor in Dave Bautista. And I've said for years that I think he's better than Cena and The Rock, and that he'll have an Oscar before it's all over as a supporting actor. And so I think that's in his future if he can find the right material to showcase him down the road. We will see.
Well, John, you have anticipated and already answered the next question from our patrons, but I will read it anyway. This comes from Chris King, who says, as someone who grew up as a WWE fan, I'm still amazed at how hilarious and heartfelt Dave Bautista's performance in this film is every time I revisit it. And his question is, where do you think Bautista ranks on the all-time list of wrestlers turned actors?
Oh, I think he's number one. I really do. I think he's number one. I mean, I might be forgetting a really good actor who like dabbled in wrestling at the beginning of his career and then found to get into acting, but I don't know many wrestlers that are turned actors that are famous that I would know. Like Hulk Hogan, terrible. Roddy Piper, damn good. for what he was for They Live, not really necessarily the greatest.
They Live completely succeeds at being They Live.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and someday we're gonna have to do that movie. Yeah, and Cena is really good at the comedic stuff. But I'll tell you this: coming out of Peacemaker, I have a whole nother expectation for John Cena now because of, I think, episode 2 when he breaks down on the bed and has essentially a depression breakdown, suicidal, hate myself type of breakdown. Not many actors could achieve the reality, organic reality of that scene as well as Cena did. It was incredible. And that turned me around completely on him, that he has that potential with the right material. I still think Dave is the best. Dave brings a soulfulness that I don't think any of them have been able to capture, not even The Rock. I think The Rock is good too for the roles that he can be good in terms of action stuff. And I think he's a good actor. I don't think he's a great actor, but I think Dave has the potential to be a great actor. And so I say Dave Bautista at the top of the pile.
It'll be interesting to see because now he's slimmed down and he's,
which is on purpose, by the way.
To what?
Which is on purpose, by the way.
Yeah. It'll be, well, you were talking earlier about how if you're an actor that this is part of your instrument that you must take control of. It'll be interesting to see what roles he takes next.
Yeah.
I think what he pulls off in this particular movie is amazing, because it is total, and this is the thing, is that there are all sorts of parts where you can look at it and go, oh, this character is kind of like that character.
Right.
And so there's nothing like Drax. There's no guide to look at and go like, oh, this is how I'm supposed to play it. By the way, a couple other people considered for this role. One of them makes perfect sense, and the other one was shocking to me.
Okay.
The one that makes perfect sense is Jason Momoa.
Oh, yeah. Hands down.
And he just kind of was like, I've kind of done this. I don't want to get typecast.
Yeah,
and so he goes and does Aquaman, which is terrible. And like, instead of this, but the other one is someone who will show up very soon in a Marvel movie. And that is Chadwick Boseman.
Oh, wow. That would have been interesting, but I'm glad they went with Bautista because of where, they went with Chadwick. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to say that it would be interesting in an alternate universe to see Chadwick Boseman's take on Drax, sure.
Yeah.
I'm happy the way things worked out. I'm not happy the way things worked out for Chadwick Boseman. Of course, that is tragedy.
Yeah.
By the way, this is so for Drax for Zoe Saldaña, 4 or 5 hours of makeup. Dave Bautista, 4 or 5 hours of makeup, and the scarification, which replaced the tattoos of the original character.
Oh yeah.
That tells a whole story.
It's a fascinating origin too, because the character is a human being, and let me just explain that the character's origin story relates that Arthur Douglas was a human whose family was attacked and killed by Thanos. That's accurate from the comics. His wife and his daughter were killed by Thanos, and needing a champion to battle Thanos, the being known as Kronos took Arthur's spirit and placed it in a powerful new body. And that's how Drax the Destroyer was born in the comics. So it is a human being, and they don't really explore that with the Drax story. And I guess since Dave's not coming back to play it, they never really will. But this is how he was created. So it's a human being, and he has the story in his mind because in his mind they put that in his mind that Thanos killed his wife and child. And the reason is because Thanos thought humans saw him and would be able to tell each other who Thanos was. So he killed Arthur, thinking that Arthur had seen him when he came to visit Earth. So that's the reason why Drax is the way he is and is obsessed with killing. But they, of course, adjusted that so that it's Ronan who killed his family, not Thanos. So, yeah.
That is interesting. And we cut to it's late at night, a fantastic top-down shot of Peter Quill sleep in a sea of bodies.
As you do in prison, I guess.
I mean, that's what you do in the Kiln. By the way, one of the outtakes or something, Chris Pratt says something about, this is actually really comfy, guys. And they're all kind of nod like, yeah, this is nice.
Yeah, it's like being back at a summer camp or something.
Exactly. And then we hear some commotion because they are dragging Gamora away.
Take her down to the showers. It'll be easier to clean up the blood down there.
And Quill hears that, and he sits up to go after her, and then Rocket wakes up, and Rocket's hair is matted in this very particular way.
Yes.
And this says so much to me about what making good movies is that James Gunn was obsessed with this image. And it's because he has a dog, and the dog has some ridiculous name that I don't remember, but James Gunn loves his dog, and his dog has a lot of hair and would wake up with this matted hair. And he was like, I want to make this happen with Rocket. It took 50 versions of the CGI shot to pull off this one shot that's on screen for a couple of seconds at best.
Jesus. Well, his dog is the basis for Crypto now, the super dog that's coming into Superman. He's got pictures of it. Yeah, it's a shelter dog, or a dog he found. And the dog's hair is all over the place. That makes all the sense in the world.
And we end up with Gamora getting pushed up against the wall.
Gamora, consider this a death sentence for your crimes against the galaxy.
You dare!
And there is Drax in the doorway, just looking huge and powerful. And you can see by their reaction to him that they know who Drax is.
Yeah.
By the way, James Gunn knew nothing about wrestling, didn't know Dave Bautista was a wrestler, had no idea who he was, had never heard of him.
What?
And they bring this guy into audition, and he's like, well, this is perfect. He just got it, you know?
Wow. That is surprising, because I thought for sure they knew about it, maybe he'd be skeptical about it, but the fact that he didn't know about it, I bet that helped him even more so get the job, because he didn't have any preconceived notions about him before he auditioned. Amazing.
And what we hear is that he's known as Drax the Destroyer, and that Ronan murdered his wife and daughter.
He killed my family. I shall kill one of his in return.
And I love their reaction as soon as they're like, oh yeah, here, take the knife. Yeah, whatever you want. And Gamora uses that little bit of distraction to fight back. And now she has two weapons. She has it these people's throats. And of course, simultaneously, Quill is moving forward towards this with Rocket going, dude, what are you doing?
I'm no family to Ronan or Thanos.
And she drops the weapons. One interesting thing about this line, apparently Zoe Saldaña could not remember how to pronounce Thanos. She just was like, is it Thanos? Is it Thanos? And so basically it just became a ritual. Every time right before the take, James Gunn would remind her of the pronunciation. She just had like a mental block.
That's great.
I'm your only hope in stopping him.
Woman, your words mean nothing to me.
Hey. Oh, crap. You know, if killing Ronan is truly your sole purpose, I don't think this is the best way to go about it.
Are you not the man this wench attempted to kill?
Well, I mean, she's hardly the first woman to try and do that to me.
And then we get just a perfect Peter Quill ramble.
Yeah. This is a Captain Kirk moment, in essence, talking about all the women he's bedded in the universe, in the galaxy.
I would say it 100% is, except if you remove Captain Kirk's cool in a certain, you know what I mean?
Because 100%, yes.
Because it's all about the women who bit him and need him, and the sky. It's a little bit of the Jaws thing with showing the scars, you know?
Right here, a Kree girl tried to rip out my thorax. She caught me with this skinny little Oscavarian who worked in Nova Records. I was trying to get information. Ever see an Oscavarian? Tentacles, needles for teeth. I think I'm seriously interested in that.
So good.
And what's so great about this, it's kind of like the dance-off at the end, is that he's distracting. You know, it's just like, it's so bizarre, all the things he's saying in this moment, that it completely pulls the energy out of him killing her.
So let me ask you something. Is he doing this because this is a frog and he doesn't like that they're going to kill the frog like when he was a kid?
Great point.
Or is this the beginnings of his attraction for her? Like what do you think the impetus, or a combination of both?
Yeah, my answer is both. I hadn't thought about the frog thing at all, but you're 100% right about that.
Not that she's a defenseless frog. I mean that it's the situation, the odds are against her, I guess.
Yep, and he doesn't like that. And absolutely, I think, you know, with the basic rule, attractive guy, attractive woman in a movie, they will be attracted to each other.
Yeah,
she betrayed Ronan. He's coming back for her. And when he does, that's when you...
And Peter Quill does the gesture of throat slitting by running a finger across his throat. And this is the moment that Drax's character comes out. This is the special thing about him that is unlike any other character in any movie ever.
Why would I put my finger on his throat?
What? Oh, no, it's a symbol. This is a symbol for you slicing his throat.
I would not slice his throat. I would cut his head clean off.
It's so good, right? And I don't even know if this is how he is in the comics, Steve.
I have no idea.
The genius of this to add this to his character to essentially make the baddest, most muscular guy the comic relief.
The most violent, the most angry, the most vengeful, he is serious. He is 100% serious.
He is called the Destroyer for a reason.
Yeah.
To make him the installed comic relief of the film constantly whenever he's in a scene, I think it was just a stroke of genius in the writing. Whoever wrote that, whatever iteration it came in, is a stroke of genius. And Dave plays it so well because at no point are you forgetting that he could absolutely rip your throat out, but you are laughing at his inability to grasp these phrases or these metaphors, right, or these concepts.
I remember I was teaching a class once, we were talking about comedy, and I was trying to explain a thing, and I've never figured out how to explain it well. But there's things where there's a character who is funny, and they are funny in the movie, and everyone in the movie knows that character is funny. Right. Like Vince Vaughn in Old School is making jokes, and other people know that he's making jokes. And then there's characters where they are being funny, but nobody else in the movie is responding like they're funny. Yeah. So like Eddie Murphy in Beverly Hills Cop is hilarious, but other people aren't laughing. He's hilarious for us, the audience. And then there are these things where there are funny things happening and nothing funny is happening for the characters. I mean, it's like, a Ben Stiller movie where it's hugely embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's hilarious, but nobody in the movie thinks it's funny and he doesn't think he's being funny. And then this is this totally bizarre one. The character is not funny at all. He is 100% serious, but he is saying things that are so funny.
Yeah.
And some people in the movie, like, Peter Quill knows that they're ridiculous and thinks it's fun. It's completely its own thing.
Well, and because you can't call him out on him being oblivious or he might rip your throat out. So it makes it even more of an interesting comedic situation to be. And what do great comedians say when they're doing comedies is like, you have to believe 100% everything you're saying and not think it's funny so that it comes off as funny. And clearly Dave really really implemented that in his performance.
Well, and I think the key to the whole thing, and this obviously from being an actor, is you have to commit to this.
Yes.
Like you have to, this has to be 100% real. There can't be the tiniest smirk or this does not work.
Or you give it away. Yep,
yeah.
100%.
And I love too that Quill then looks around to all the other aliens and goes,
it's a general expression for you killing somebody. You've heard of this. You've seen this, right? You know what that is.
Yeah.
Everyone knows.
No.
Yeah, no. He looks at Drax, who's looking at him. He goes, no.
It's great.
What I'm saying is you want to keep her alive. Don't do his work for him.
And he thinks. And he drops her, and she's gasping because she was choking her. And he says,
I like your knife. I'm keeping it.
James Gunn says this is the moment where the movie gets going.
Oh, wow.
Because now you have all the pieces in place. Like we know what this is the whole team of the Guardians of the Galaxy. We understand who kind of each of these people are. We sort of understand what the situation is. It's this moment.
So yeah, I see what you're saying. Like, okay, from this point forward, they're now in essence a team, even if they don't know that they're a team. Yeah.
Well, and actually you asked the question of why does he go to help Gamora? Is it the frog or is it attraction? Yeah. Well, now we get a third reason.
Listen, I could care less whether you live or whether you die.
Then why stop the big guy?
Simple. You know where to sell my orb.
How are we gonna sell it when we and it are still here?
My friend Rocket here has escaped 22 prisons.
Oh, we're getting out.
I love how quickly the Quill just kind of joins in as a friend with Rocket and Groot.
Yeah. Well, because it serves his purpose to do so.
And then we're headed straight to Yondu to retrieve your bounty.
How much was your buyer willing to pay you for my orb?
4 billion units.
What? Holy shit.
Now, John, I don't know from units, but 4 billion seems like a lot.
4 billion anything is a lot. So I think I would take that over whatever Rocket was offered.
That orb is my opportunity to get away from Thanos and Ronan. If you free us, I'll lead you to the buyer directly and I'll split the profit between the three of us.
One of the things that they struggled with was making it really clear that Gamora had betrayed Thanos and Ronan. And part of why they was so hard is there's a deleted scene where Gamora is flying away from Ronan's ship before going to Xandar, and she kills all of Ronan's henchmen, and therefore you see that she is betraying Ronan, and then she lands, and you already know that when she is taking the orb from Quill outside of the brokers.
Interesting.
But they cut that scene out for two reasons. One is because they felt it was not necessary. And then two is like, well, if you see Gamora has already played Ronan before she meets Quill, there's less conflict.
Right.
We want to think that she's working for Ronan when that happens. And so they take the scene out. But now it becomes really, really hard to make very clear to the audience that she's not Team Ronan.
Right.
That's one of these things that happens when you're editing and why, you spend so much time recutting a scene.
Yeah.
I'm Groot. 4 of us. Asleep for the danger, awake for the money, as per frickin' usual.
The best. And we cut to Ronan in the sanctuary domain of Thanos.
Yeah. How about this?
And what we see is there's something floating up in the air that we can't quite see, but Ronan is talking to the other who I think we met in Avengers.
Yes.
And basically they're talking about Gamora and Gamora's betrayal, and Nebula is there just... I don't know if you can snarkily listen, but if you could snarkily listen to something, that is how she's doing it.
100%.
Basically, the other is giving Ronan a lot of crap.
Thanos put Gamora under your charge.
When she was apprehended by the Nova Corps.
You are the one here with nothing to show for it.
Your sources say that she meant to betray us the whole time.
Now at your turn, I reveal.
And Ronan hits him with a beam from his hammer, spinning his head clean around.
Yeah.
Part of why they did this was to show how powerful Ronan is, because I think the other had dominated Loki in Avengers. Yeah. And so him killing him so easily makes Ronan look powerful.
Yeah, subtly throughout the Marvel movies, they create this hierarchy of the people who are like not superheroes, and that these are galaxy dwellers. There is hierarchy amongst the galaxy dwellers here. And Ronan doing this in front of Thanos, which normally we would think, oh, Thanos is going to kill him, but Thanos is obviously someone who respects strength, and he allows Ronan to get away with doing that, but because he's got his other plans for Ronan.
I think they do a really good job, both physically and symbolically, to say Thanos is way above Ronan. Because now you see that floating throne turn around, and we get our first look at Josh Brolin as Thanos.
Yeah, that's a good look. I like this as a beginning, and of course, Josh took over from the other actor who had been Thanos in the previous post-credit scenes and what have you. So they wanted to bring in Josh, and I think Josh delivers a fantastic performance throughout the whole MCU up until Endgame. Yeah. And possibly rumors are he's coming back for Secret Wars. We'll see.
Oh, interesting. And James Gunn says basically, look, I know Thanos is sort of shoehorned into this movie, because this is sort of one of those examples that I think become really egregious later on of Marvel going, look, this is our plan. You have to make this work. But I think he totally does make it work in this. Yeah. I agree.
The only matter I do not take seriously, boy, is you. Your politics bore me. Your demeanor is that of a pouty child. And apparently, you alienated my favorite daughter, Gamora.
I love Nebula's reaction when he says
it's
that little sibling rivalry moment.
Well, and what's so great about it is like the Nebula, as we meet her here, this is a bad person.
Yes.
But because of that line and that reaction shot, we have sympathy for her.
Yes.
And that sympathy is going to build her character for a whole bunch more movies.
Yeah. Because all of us have had that experience, whether in a sibling situation or a friend situation or a work situation, where we sense that we're not the favorites. And that comes through in those moments.
I shall honor our agreement, Kree, if you bring me the order. But return to me again empty-handed, and I will bathe the starways in your blood.
God, I love that line. I will bathe the starways with your blood, or in your blood. And I love that. Like,
I'm surprised I haven't seen you put that out on Twitter when someone crosses you.
Well, if I ever get to achieve the level of power Thanos has, I guess will.
You got to be able to back it up. That's
key.
Exactly.
Thanks, Dad. Sounds fair.
That kind of strut away.
And we talk about how Bautista understood the assignment. I think Karen Gillan and James Gunn did as well, right? And those giving her these little offhanded comments to make, give her more personality, more dimension, more depth. And we, as an audience, are now intrigued by her, because she has this saunter, and you compare it to the fact that they're the only other person that she feels intimidated by besides her dad is Gamora. Because she's a pretty powerful person, Nebula. So there is these little, like, dare I say, human characteristics that they give her in these moments that make her feel relatable when you're watching it. And as you said, Steve, so well, make us have sympathy for her.
I'm sure you've had this where there's something that you're pretty good at, and then there's just one person who is just ever so slightly better at that thing than you, and it's just galling. Like a friend of the show and my oldest friend might be listening right now, David Seelig has always been 15% better than me at ping pong. It just really bugs me.
I have that with Maurice. I have never beaten Maurice in a tennis match in my entire life. And there's nothing that galls me more than never have beaten him in my entire life. It's so far from when we were kids to when we played maybe 10 years ago on a rooftop court in LA. I always lose to him, and it drives me insane because I'm a good tennis player.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
And that to me is Nebula and Gamora. It's like Nebula is powerful and awesome, and she always just comes up a little bit short against Gamora, and it is galling. Back on the Kiln, we hear that the plan is we got to get into the Watchtower and that he is going to need a few things. First one is the security band from the guard's arm, which Gamora says she's going to get.
That dude there. I need his prosthetic leg. His leg? Yeah. God knows I don't need the rest of him. Look at him, he's useless.
We're like, okay. And at this point, I think we kind of believe, we don't understand Rocket. We're like, all right.
Yeah.
And then he starts talking about this thing that's high up below the Watchtower with a blinky light.
Purplish box, green wires. To get into that Watchtower, I definitely need it.
How are we supposed to do that?
Well, supposedly these bald bodies find you attractive, so maybe you can work out some sort of trade.
You must be joking.
No, I really heard they find you attractive.
That's like a classic joke structure right there.
Yeah, yeah.
So I love the shot because in the background, you see Groot just get up and walk slowly back to this thing, and this goes on towards the entire scene.
And I love that the whole time, just slightly out of focus is Groot. It's just brilliant. To film this correctly, you've got to put him out of focus just enough so that the people in the foreground are keeping your attention, but you are also noticing this thing doing exactly what Rocket is saying they have to do later in the plan. He is doing it right now.
And I love, too, by the way, that Drax is watching.
Yes.
As Groot sort of stretches up and he pulls off the panel. And then he's pulling out the battery, which is on this long cable. And at this moment that he's pulling on the battery, Rocket says,
Now, this is important. Once the battery is removed, everything is going to slam into emergency mode. Once we have it, we got to move quickly. So you definitely need to get that last.
As the word last is just hovering in the air, Groot rips that battery off and all hell breaks loose. And he says,
or we can just get it first and improvise.
And this is the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, 100%.
The essence of them, of just being, we might have a plan, but that is not how things are going to go. So the bots have flown in and surrounded Groot, and he yells,
I am Groot!
I don't think Vin Diesel is the world's greatest actor. But man, what he does, it's like what we were saying about Drax. This is a high degree of difficulty. You have 3 words, and you get a couple of different words later on in the movie, and you got to do everything with them.
This is a Meisner exercise.
Totally.
Right? That's what and Stallone does it later in the Suicide Squad with King Shark. It's this thing of saying things in a certain way over and over and over again, and you're imbuing each of the repeated phrases with a different emotion. That's for those who don't know, in acting class, you have the Meisner, one of the Meisner exercises is that you say something innocuous,
right,
and you say it back and forth, and each of you gives it a different emotion each time, and the other person reacts to the emotion they're getting, and then you react to their emotion, saying, so I am yellow, I am yellow, I am yellow, I'm yellow. So you're going this back and forth so you can access all these things. So you know that it's not the lines sometimes that matter, it's the emotion that you're bringing to the lines. And so it was such a brilliant thing to use that as an acting technique in the movie. And you're absolutely right that Vin, not really known for being the greatest of actors, He does a really good job with this and the subtlety in how he changes I am Groot into delivery. Yeah.
And I love that you see step by step how unbelievably powerful Groot is.
Yes.
And in this moment, I love his arms fuzz out into these branchy shields, to protect himself from the box. And Rocket runs up, jumps on Groot's back and says,
"You idiot! How am I supposed to fight these things without my stuff?"
And Drax looks around as guards come out with their big weapons, wipes them out. Moves are super cool. And he grabs a gun and tosses the gun. This is one of James Gunn's favorite shots in the whole movie. Tosses the gun. It flies in slow motion to Rocket, who catches it perfectly as the camera pushes in on him into a close-up as he cocks the weapon and says, "Oh, yeah."
It's good stuff.
And he just opens fire, screaming. And in this moment, we see, this is why Groot and Rocket are a great team.
Yeah. Everyone gets in loving Groot. And Groot has a vicious side to him.
Oh, yeah.
When he's yelling with Rocket as they're spinning around, you see the angry face that Groot has. So you're like, this guy is capable of destroying anyone and everything he wants at any moment. He just doesn't want to. And, those are the things that you see come out every once in a while with him.
And I love that we're in the loud, chaotic, violent, action-packed space, and that we cut to a totally quiet space where Quill is just talking to the leg guy. He goes, "You need my what?" Gamora has a great little fight scene taking this guy out and finally catches him in this sort of knee against his throat brace.
I'll need this.
Good luck. It's internally wired.
I'll figure something out.
And looks like she breaks his arm.
Yeah.
And they're heading towards the watchtower. Gamora makes this huge jump that's awesome. Groot stretches super tall. Quill climbs up Groot with the leg there, and a bot just has him dead to rights. And then Drax takes the bot out.
You! Man who has lain with the last Bavarian.
It was one time, man.
Just one time, man. Quips. The quips are just so good.
Well, because he had denied it 5 minutes ago, and now he says that you who laid with an Escavarian, he's like, it was one time, and so he was totally lying that he didn't find her attractive. Yeah, exactly.
We're inside the control room with the guy running it, and he's calling for help because stuff is coming, and then we hear that door open, and he turns around, and we get just a perfect shot of the whole team standing there. It's like the splash page in the comic book, you know?
100%.
Gamora, not so pleased about Drax being there.
Spare me your foul gaze, woman.
Why is this one here?
We promised him he could stay by your side until he kills your boss. I always keep my promises when they're to muscle bound whack jobs will kill me if I don't.
And he goes to hand Rocket the leg.
Oh, I was just kidding about the leg. I just need these two things.
What?
No, I thought it'd be funny. Was it funny? No, wait, what did he look like hopping around?
I had to transfer him 30,000 units.
It's so terrible. It's so terrible. Because later with Bucky, I'm going to get that arm.
Cease your yammering and relieve us from this irksome confinement.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with the walking thesaurus on that one.
Do not ever call me a thesaurus.
And it's totally menacing.
Yeah.
It's just a metaphor, dude.
His people are completely literal. Metaphors are going to go over his head.
This next line. It's just... I love this line. So this might be one of my favorites.
Nothing goes over my head. My reflexes are too fast. I would catch it.
I'm gonna die surrounded by the biggest idiots in the galaxy.
My note here is, this is awesome. Well, this is, ever since I think the first one I really noticed is when we did Airplane years and years ago with Scott Mantz, is there's certain comedies where it's like, well, I just want to read the lines and laugh at them. I don't have anything to add. I have no Cine-Files wisdom to drop on this sequence. I just think it's so damn funny.
Yeah.
And the guards are coming in. They're all firing. We're doing a countdown, 3, 2, 1. Each time they're firing. And then at the last one, where we know the last shot from the guards is going to blow up the place, Rocket finally connects the cable, switching off the gravity in the prison, and everybody floats up.
And Gamora gives him credit.
Yeah.
Right? Because she wasn't sure that his plan was going to work. And I go back to my point. They're all alphas, but they take over at different times in the movie. Rocket took over here for this plan because he knows how to escape.
Well, if I accept your definition of the term alpha, which I do not, I 100% agree with you.
Right.
But my definition is someone who absolutely needs to be in control and dominates other people, and that is how they are the alpha.
I mean,
and that,
I feel like Rocket would do that if he could. I just feel like he would if he could.
Well, all sorts of people would be alphas if they could, but that doesn't make them alphas. They get out of the control center, and Quill points to his ship outside the window, which is kind of docked, and he says,
Yeah, there it is. Get my ship. It's the Milano, the orange and blue one over in the corner.
You know, for a long time, I just accepted that the ship was called the Milano. And I was like, okay, it's an interesting name, all these different names in Guardians. I didn't know that it was actually tied to Peter Quill's childhood crush, Alyssa Milano, because when he's taken in 1988, he's 8 years old. And that makes all the sense in the world that he would have a childhood crush on Alyssa Milano because she's on Who's the Boss at the time. And you imagine that's probably when he was starting to look at girls and what have you. So it makes all the sense in the world that he would call it the Milano because it's the first first female he was ever in love with. And so that's the ship where he's going to probably hook up and make out with a lot of women himself. So it makes all the sense in the world. And I thought it was a genius move to call it the Milano. I don't know if it's called the Milano. I'm pretty sure it's not called the Milano in the comics. But if it is called the Milano in the comics, the fact that they tied it to Alyssa Milano is genius for the movie.
I think it was funny. Someone on Patreon had sent us the message, did you find every one of James Gunn's Easter eggs? To which the answer is like, of course we didn't. But this is one I didn't know that. And that is fantastic. Well, and this is, we talk about things like fan service and Easter eggs and things like that. Yeah. And it's where you can find none of them and know none of them and totally adore the movie. And if you find one like Milano, it's a joy. That's where it's working great.
Yeah.
It's where if you don't know them, the movie doesn't work. That's where there's a real problem.
Yeah. Agreed.
We found all our stuff.
The orb's there. Let's go.
Wait.
What?
That bastard didn't put it back.
Do you think when you first saw it, you knew what was missing?
When he was looking through the thing? Yes.
Yeah.
The Walkman. Yes, 100%. Because he had made such a big deal about it with the guy in the blue guy when they were walking into the prison. So I knew immediately what he was looking for.
I think that I agree because I think it's a perfect setup. I think you're going like, oh, this is the most important. The orb is the most important object to everyone in the galaxy.
Yeah.
But to Peter Quill, that is not the most important object. We know what the most important object is.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he goes, well, here, you go to the Milano and I'll meet you there. And they're like, well, what are you doing? And he heads off, somehow has fully gotten into his Star-Lord outfit again. Costume changes, always important in the Marvel universe. And now we're in the Milano in space and they're going, how's Quill going to get here?
Well, screw this then. I ain't waiting around for some Huey with a death wish. You got the orb, right?
Yes.
And she opens up the bag. No orb.
No orb, of course, because he knew they would take off without it. He's smart. Why?
And it's not going to be the last time we swap out that orb.
True. Very true.
And then we cut to the guy that we saw at the beginning that found the Walkman, and he is playing maybe the top yacht rock song of this kind of thing of all time, Escape, the Pina Colada song.
Yeah, from Rupert Holmes. By the way, there is a new trailer out for an HBO Max documentary on yacht rock that just dropped yesterday. So as you're listening to this, if you happen to watch that trailer, I highly encourage you to watch it if you're a yacht rock person, because I love yacht rock. And Escape is a song written and performed by British-American singer-songwriter Rupert Holmes. It's taken from his 5th studio album, Partners in Crime. And as the lead single, the pop song was recommended by Billboard for radio broadcasters on September 29th at 1979, rising in popularity. The song peaked at the end of December to become the final U.S. #1 song of the 1970s. And I think that's perfect because, as you said, Steve, this is absolutely, possibly the greatest yacht rock song ever. And the fact that it is the last #1 of the 1970s, I think kind of decorates the 1970s in that way. And I thought it's a perfect thing to use this song here. And I have never not sang along whenever this song is popped on, and I've never turned the station whenever this is one of my favorite songs, period. So it's a good thing they used it here.
Well, and again, it goes to this is how you're going to use this particular song. Like, how does this make sense? He's listening to it. Quill knocks him out with the orb.
If we don't leave now, we will be blown to bits.
No! We're not leaving without the orb.
And Drax goes, "Behold." And just having that song come in with the shot of Star-Lord flying through space is just one of the great MCU moments of all time.
I never thought you could make that song and make it cool. Do you know what I'm saying? And in slow motion, as Peter is going there, it is, or slow motion of space, not slow motion overall. He does look cool, and the song sounds cool. So you buy into Drax for that moment until we get the very funny button.
Quill comes into the spaceship, and Drax is just super impressed with him and says,
"This one shows spirit. She'll make a keen ally in the battle against Ronan. Companion, what were you retrieving?"
And of course, his expectation is that it's a powerful weapon or it's some valuable thing or something magic. And he pulls out the Walkman, and without hesitation, Drax says,
"You're an imbecile."
And so at this moment of like, we have linked them all together, but they are not yet a team and they don't yet trust each other. I think it is the perfect time to end part 1 of our exploration of the Guardians of the Galaxy, which is it going a long time? Yeah, it totally is. I mean, I was surprised by how long it took to get through the verdict because there was so much there, so much deep emotion, so much powerful things to be discussed.
Yeah.
And you know what? Guardians of the Galaxy is not that. But I'm loving every little detail we're finding and everything that we're discussing here.
Yeah. And it's such a great movie that it's fun to break it down the way we're doing it on this show. And to the person who wants us to find every James Gunn Easter egg, this ain't that kind of show. So, we're going to do, as Steve said, we adhered to breaking it down as a film and how it's constructed, not necessarily finding every Easter egg. But there's a lot here for us to break down and discuss because this is one of the great films, regardless of whether it's a superhero film or not. It is one of the great films we've gotten over the last 25 years. So I think it's fun to break it down the way we've been doing it here on the show, and can't wait to dive into our next part to keep going down this path.
And of course, we'd love to hear all of your thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy and maybe some of those things that we missed. I'm sure there are a million of them. You can visit us on our Facebook page. Just do a search for the Cine-Files. It's Cine_Files on X. It's the Cine-Files podcast on Instagram. And if you want to support the show, we said patreon.com/the Cine-Files or Apple Podcasts. And then you can subscribe to the show at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, a whole bunch of other places. If you are on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, please leave a review or a comment on YouTube. And if you want to buy or stream the Guardians of the Galaxy along with every other film we've ever reviewed, it's on cinephiles.net. And you can reach me at SR Morris on Twitter and SR Morris1 on Instagram. John, how about you?
You can always reach me at The Rocha Says on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, The Outlaw Nation on Twitch. Oh, and I am now on Blue Sky. I have joined Blue Sky, so if anybody wants to head on over to Blue Sky, you can follow me at The Rocha Says there as well, and my YouTube channel, youtube.com/John Rocha Says.
And I think that's it for this week. We'll be back to, I hope, laugh a whole bunch more in Guardians of the Galaxy Part 2 right here on the Cine-Files.